Okay, Delegate Roberts, we'll wait. Good afternoon. Today is March 11th. Welcome to the bill hearings for the Ways and Means Committee. First, we will call Delegate Wells. Okay, whoever is presenting for the city, House Bill 1508, Faith Leach, yep, come on up.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Faith Leach, and I serve as the City Administrator in the City of Baltimore. And I am here today to testify in support of House Bill 1508 on behalf of the Baltimore City Administration. HB 1508 authorizes the mayor and city council to establish a sales tax on retail sales of tangible personal property and taxable services in the city of Baltimore that cannot exceed 2%. Each percentage point of the sales tax generates approximately $69.3 million annually. By providing Baltimore with the opportunity to generate its own revenue through a local sales tax, Maryland would be aligning its tax policy with Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina, and many other states. In fact, of the 124 U.S. cities with 200,000 residents or more, 89% generate revenue through a local sales tax, and 59% receive 2% or more. Additionally, Baltimore is only one of 3 major independent cities in the country, along with St. Louis, Missouri, which has a 5.45% local sales tax, and Carson City, Nevada, which has a 3% local sales tax. All other major cities are a part of larger counties. This means that Baltimore does not have the ability to draw on the resources of a county-wide government like most cities do. While Baltimore's cultural and tourist attractions bring in millions of visitors to the state annually, we do not receive a local share of sales tax revenue generated by those attractions. The lack of a sales tax is a major contributing factor to Baltimore City's high property taxes. In a recent analysis, the CUNY Institute for State and Local Governance found that Baltimore's peer cities derive an average of 22% of their general fund from property tax and 21% from local sales tax. Baltimore currently draws 49% of our general fund revenue from property tax and 0% from sales tax. For decades, we have been among the highest property tax rates across the state, and without a significant separate source of revenue or significant change in the number of residents and businesses in the city, we will unfortunately continue to be at the top. The city, like many jurisdictions across the state, is facing significant cost shifts as a part of the FY26 budget, as well as ambiguity concerning federal funding that is critical to core services that the city provides to our residents. Besides addressing Baltimore's infrastructure needs, particularly the issue of vacant houses, which are often the biggest strains on city resources and infrastructure, the local sales tax would allow us to provide an opportunity to offer substantial property tax relief by rebalancing the load between Baltimore's residents and visitors who enjoy our city and lower the overall burden on our residents. For these reasons, the Baltimore City Administration respectfully requests a favorable report on HB 1508.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, thank you very much. Oh, Delegate Young has a question.
Thank you, Madam City Administrator. It's always a pleasure to have you down here in Annapolis. My question speaks to that relief that you talked about. You talked about it's 49% of our general fund in the city is from property tax, which is outsized amount as compared to other places. Can you talk again about that relief? You didn't get into too much detail, but if you could take a moment to do so, what that relief could look like for homeowners and residents in the city.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. So again, as I mentioned, about half of the city's budget is funded by the city's property tax rate. And because of the decline in residents, our property tax rate is one of the highest in the state and is, of course, higher than peer jurisdictions. And so what we would be willing to do with 2% of the sales tax is to dedicate 1% of that sales tax to property tax relief. And what we've calculated is with 1% of the sales tax, which is about $70 million, we would be able to do a flat across the board $1,000 rate relief for all of the homeowners in the city of Baltimore. And we would also be able to fund a rental assistance program for renters so that they would be able to benefit as well.
Thank you for that. And the second and last question, Madam Chair, is as it pertains to economic development in the city. You talked about the flight of folks who have left the city as a result, in large part, of high property taxes. What do you anticipate, or how do you anticipate that relief to have a positive impact on economic development and bringing residents into the city?
Absolutely. By providing property tax relief, we will be competitive with peer jurisdictions, not just in the state of Maryland, but our peers in Pennsylvania, DC, Virginia, if we are able to lower our property tax rate. Baltimore is still one of the most affordable cities on the East Coast if you want to buy a home. But when you add in the cost of the property taxes, it makes us slightly less competitive. And so if we're able to provide that across the board rate relief, then we're going to be able to reach out and target those folks who are interested in living in the city of Baltimore due to affordability and look to couple that with other efforts to grow our city's population.
Thank you, Madam CAO, for your leadership. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Delegate Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here and presenting. And I have heard of this in other states, particularly, I believe it was Georgia, where they had a increase on their sales tax overall that the jurisdictions could use for the capital improvements of schools. Would that be part of what you're doing here? And are there any other counties or municipalities in Maryland that are doing this already, or is it just other areas that you've seen do this?
Thank you so much for that question. So in the state of Maryland, there are no other jurisdictions that receive a portion of the sales tax. The only caveat is in Ocean City. They receive 0.5% of the sales tax on food and beverages, which funded the renovation of their convention center. Okay. Other jurisdictions that we've seen in Pennsylvania, also in Virginia as well. Virginia actually added, I want to say they added 5% increase on the sales tax specifically on food and beverages, and I believe that was dedicated to infrastructure and other needs for local jurisdictions, and it's across the board 1% sales tax is maintained by those local jurisdictions. And in Pennsylvania, I believe they go up to 2%, but it varies by jurisdiction. So in Philadelphia, which I have the numbers here, I can look up, I believe Philadelphia gets 2% of the local share of sales tax, but it varies by jurisdiction in Pennsylvania.
And then is there thought to use it for like the capital projects for schools or anything like that as well?
So we would be looking at overall infrastructure and overall capital investment as well as that rate relief for our homeowners. And so the idea behind that, right now, our capital budget, we recently increased it to about $125 million. Prior to the recent authorization, our capital budget was $80 million. When I look at peer jurisdictions, or I just look across the way at Baltimore County, the budget for their schools renovations is larger than the Baltimore City's entire capital budget. And so we would love to do and put in an infusion of resources to improve the infrastructure across our city.
And then one last question real quick. So you do have in the bill about taxable service. So if something like the business-to-business tax on services would go into effect, then would your 2% be then in addition to the 2.5? It's a 2.5% tax on services.
Yes.
That businesses bid, so it would be in addition to them. So
yes,
like
so it would be, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear for folks at home that might be watching. Things like groceries, for example, would be exempt, of course, but it would be in addition. We are open, and we were having some conversations earlier today about hotels, for example, and so we are open to amendments and exemptions as a part of this bill.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1508. Delegate Wu, House Bill 1523, Howard County Delegation Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and the Ways and Means Committee. I'm presenting Bill HB 1523 on behalf of Howard County Delegation and the Howard County room rental tax. And this is really just to try to increase the tax from 7 to 8% and use the extra revenue to support Howard County tourism. And I'm looking forward to a favorable report.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1523. Delegate Adams, House Bill 1524.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. For the record, Delegate Chris Adams here to present House Bill 1524, titled Wacomico County Board of Education, Election of Members, Student Member, and Compensation. The words may not, I don't think, show up in the bill. Delegate Fair? Yeah. Just very briefly, the bill's here as a late file. In February, there was a consent decree between the county and NAACP to remove the at-large districts on a county level. And so within that consent decree, the Board of Education, unlike the county, has to do this through legislation. So this bill will bring seven districts that'll match the councilmanic districts that the county is going to create for the election next year. So I can go into further detail, but I think the essence of the bill is fairly simple. We're here and thanking you to get it out of rules and pass this year so the county and the Board of Education can make the corrections needed.
So this bill would allow the county to match the consent decree? Or
Right,
do
so
what- or comply with this consent decree?
Right, so in the consent decree, the Wacomico County Council has 2 at-large districts and then 5 councilmanic districts. So the consent decree got rid of the 2 at-large districts. So there will be next election cycle 7 councilmanic districts. For the Board of Education, we passed a law not that many years ago that created a fully elected school board, and it matches up until this bill, when you pass it, the 2 at-large districts and then 5 districts, Board of Education districts. So the bill will basically bring the Board of Education in compliance with that consent decree, meaning that whatever districts are drawn at the county council level, the Board of Education's districts will be identical.
Okay. Okay, the Vice Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. As you know, the issue of district voting has been before this committee and before the House a few times. So I wanted to make sure that I understand the issue. Can you slow it down for me and unpack what Howard County, not Howard County, Wicomico County. Let me correct the record. What Wicomico County currently has in terms of its elections and what is required under the consent decree. Let's
Okay, so here's a consent decree that was signed, I believe, in February. So I'll be glad to leave this copy if you wish to read the terms and conditions that the county council entered into. But for the purpose of election districts, what changed is that we currently have 2 at-large districts. So for Wicomico County, 2 members get elected from the votes of all the citizens in Wicomico County. And then 5 are elected to councilmanic districts that are drawn every 10 years. Within my 11-year term, we've changed from the Wicomico County Board of Education from an appointed school board to an elected school board. And so you currently have now that we've phased it all in, everybody that's on the Wicomico County Board of Education is elected. They are elected to those same districts. There are 2 at-large districts that are served in the Board of Education, and then 5 members that are voted within those same districts as the councilmanic districts are in the county.
And now, under the consent decree, what is required?
What the 2 parties agreed to was to remove the at-large districts on the county council level. I'm not here to present a bill on that because it's not necessary. They can do that on the county level. The bill you have before you today is, in its essence, going to require that the Board of Education match its districts, all 7, to be the same districts that council members will be elected in 2026.
So you're going to 7 districts,
That's correct.
in district voting only?
That's correct.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in an ancillary way, you're also establishing a student member of the board here that doesn't exist currently, is that correct?
So Wacomico County Board of Education has had and does currently have non-voting members from the student body in Wacomico County. They're not here today, it's sponsor only, but what I believe happens is there's one student from each high school, so there's multiple students that are selected, not elected, and they don't show up for voting sessions, so they don't vote.
So this establishes a single member, a student member of the board, I think, if I read it correctly.
Well,
I'm going to let you say yes or no to that if you want.
So in fairness, there is an amendment, and I'm presenting the bill with a sponsor amendment that may allow for Wacomico County to continue to have multiple student members
Okay.
serve in a non-voting fashion on the board, which is current practice.
Just some real quick clarifying ones, if I can, Madam Chair. So you're establishing some minimum salaries for the board members, here I see, that could either be increased or not, but you're establishing salary levels. I don't need you to go into the detail on that if you don't want to.
So I think that the salary levels are existing. What changes under the bill is that in future salary changes, we're authorizing Wacomico County Council to make those changes.
The dollar amounts look new to me too, but I don't always read bills correctly. But,
Sure.
and you're offering no voting rights whatever to the student member, and they can't even attend executive meetings, is that correct?
Well, okay, that's correct. The bill doesn't imply that. And then further, there's multiple students that serve, so I don't know how you would have.
Well, this legislation just establishes one. I will tell you that.
I think my amendment is
Okay.
more prescriptive. And
Finally, you're not offering the student any sort of scholarship or any sort of remuneration for serving as the board member?
That's not true. In the bill, and if you give me a minute, I'll have to pull it up, but it actually
No, you
does
don't have to.
say.
That's okay. If you say it, I ask you. You don't have to. You don't have to.
Well, it does say that there can be a scholarship awarded to the students, but I didn't come prepared to, it's in the bill.
Can be, but not definitely. I'll check. Thank you.
No. Well, okay.
It says the student member is not entitled to any compensation or payment other than that specified in paragraph 1. So I'm just curious, student member.
So on the amendment, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, for not, so on page 4, lines 27 or 26, it says the student member is not entitled to any compensation or payment other than that specified under paragraph 1 of the subsection, and a scholarship if authorized by the county board. So that there is a scholarship that's included as per the amendment.
They may get a scholarship.
And I'm sorry you don't have it. This came as a late file bill through rules and not enough time to really deliver good testimony in writing.
Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate you working to answer those for me.
Sure.
Okay, I have the amendment because you sent an email, so.
Yes.
We know that you are more than prepared. We see that on the House floor every day. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1524. Delegate Weibel, House Bill 1326.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, honorable members of the committee, I am Delegate Weibel, pleased to present House Bill 1326, which establishes educational savings accounts for children in pre-kindergarten for parents who choose to relieve the LEA from that responsibility. The bill does delineate the responsibilities of the Maryland State Department of Education, the parent of the eligible child, the qualifying school, the funding mechanism, and directs MSDE to adopt regulations. Just as Blueprint allocates funding to the LEAs based on the federal poverty level, this bill also allocates funding to the individual, tying it to the family federal poverty level, with those lower on the FPL scale qualifying for a higher percentage of funds. Under the Blueprint, it is envisioned that pre-K expansion will be accomplished through a mixed delivery system involving both public schools and private child care operations, meeting the need to educate an estimated 30 to 40,000 additional youngsters in the state. HB 1326 would assist in providing a solution in meeting the need or demand for pre-K requirements under the Blueprint, would provide alternative educational opportunities, and relieve the LEA of much-needed operational and capital funding for pre-K. I thank you for your attentiveness and ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1326.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1326, House Bill 1447. Delegate Vogel.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee, Delegate Vogel here with House Bill 1447, which is a reintroduction of a bill sponsored by our former committee colleague, Senator Dalia Attar, last year. The bill establishes the Maryland STEM program, which would allow for educators, public school educators, to provide a certain number of hours in STEM education in non-public schools, and the funding would go through LEAs. With that, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1447.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1447. I do not see Delegate Jones here, so we will skip to Delegate Young, House Bill 1391. Oh, I don't see him either. Okay, Delegate Miller, let's skip to you. And is Corinne Frank here? You can come on up. And there's two virtual witnesses. We'll check to see if they are here. Michelle Corcadell and Ruby Daniels.
I don't think Ms. Frank was able to be here. She had some timing issues.
Okay, all right.
Thank
You
you.
can begin.
What was that?
You can go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am Delegate April Miller, and I am here to ask for your favorable report on House Bill 1421. This bill would repeal the status of the AIB as an independent unit of state government and make it subject to the oversight authority of the State Board of Education. It also removes plenary authority while maintaining AIB authority to monitor Blueprint implementation plans, required progress reports, and other benchmarks in the AIB's comprehensive implementation plan. So I have a great amount of respect for the current AIB, the State Board, and MSTE. The development and presentation of this bill should only be interpreted as my effort to bring forth a needed change in the governance structure of the Blueprint to allow for more effective implementation, as we have to get this right. We have all heard, especially leading up to and over this session, on the challenges from our local school systems and counties that are encountering with the Blueprint, not just from a fiscal standpoint, but also from a structural component, with many of the timelines and requirements just not physically doable, at least without devastating consequences for the system, and therefore for the students and the community. The AIB has a responsibility to not only ensure implementation at the local level, but also has a duty to the MGA to advise on necessary changes to the Blueprint due to issues with implementation, including but not limited to financial ones. The Blueprint for Maryland's Future was designed, and the Commission considered it imperative that a strong system of accountability be established to give the public trust and confidence that this historic legislation will lead to a system that performs as well as the best education systems in the world. This bill does not change the Blueprint implementation plans or any other parameters of the design of the Blueprint, nor does it place the AIB under MSDE. The intent of the legislation is to provide a level playing field for the AIB and MSDE to work as true partners in the implementation of this landmark legislation. While the AIB is strong on the content knowledge of the Blueprint itself, as many of them helped design it, However, seemingly there may be educational, institutional, structural, and knowledge gaps in their expertise on the actual impact of implementation at school levels. This has caused things like a misalignment of reporting, duplicating school staff efforts, and delays in guidance on critically important pieces of the blueprint, which can have a devastating impact for school systems and the community as they are on strict contracts and timelines for their multi-billion-dollar budgets. I am not sure that communities were expecting class sizes of 40, the loss of unique programs, and beloved teachers having to be transferred as part of the cost they are willing to pay. Fundamental change, quote, this is from the commission, one of the commission reports, fundamental changes in the institutional culture and in established ways of doing things will be required. Some will resist these changes and would prefer to use new funds to do more of what they have been doing. This must not be allowed to happen. All of the institutions and agencies involved will have to work in concert within the context of a coherent plan and be held accountable for playing their respective roles in implementing the Commission's redesign of the pre-K through 12 education system in Maryland, end quote. The Oversight Board was intended to have the authority to make sure the funds are being used as intended. However, who is then holding the AIB accountable? There are times where we have to take a step back, reevaluate, and make some changes. The AIB was not intended to usurp authority of existing agencies like MSDE, even Commerce, Labor, Higher Ed, and the state agency that is involved in implementing the legislation. This bill codifies that in relationship to the state board. The AIB is also to assess the adequacy of resources available to achieve the plan's goals on student achievement, and this is best done under the guidance of the state board and in partnership with MSDE. The state board is uniquely positioned to hold AIB accountable to ensure true partnership with MSDE, to coordinate and streamline implementation guidelines, and to provide the ultimate decision-making authority when there is a conflict of guidance or recommendations. And finally, it does provide another level of oversight when there is the possibility of up to 20% of the funding being taken away from a school system when there are already difficulties with the full implementation of this parameter of the blueprint. So this, again, this bill was not intended to cause any feelings anyway. I just really am like, we need to take a step back, look at the governance structure, look at how it's being implemented, and see if there are changes that we need to make, and that this bill is my attempt to do that.
Okay, thank you. I saw Ruby Daniels. Can we have her virtually, please? Okay, we have Michelle Corkadell for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee for your many years of dedicated public service. I am Michelle Corkadell, former president of MABE and AACPS Board of Education, and parent of 2 successful Maryland Public School graduates. I am not going to reiterate my submitted written testimony, but rather highlight a couple of considerations I hope you will make when reviewing House Bill 1421. To summarize, the issue before all of us is how do we maintain accountability and support successful implementation of the blueprint while ensuring our current AIB challenges that every LEA and the state board and superintendent are facing do not result in derailing of and hindering the educational opportunities and successes of our students. That will require a level of educational expertise that the AIB lacks under its current business model. An approach to LEA oversight. The state board's education's ethics, procurement, and clear understanding of what is appropriate measures to ensure responsible, successful implementation of the blueprint. They are best positioned to team with the AIB to achieve excellence in education for all students in Maryland. I believe House Bill 1421 goes a long way to removing existing unanticipated barriers to blueprint success, upholds the AIB's true mission and purpose, and increases administrative efficiencies of our education systems. I sincerely ask for a favorable report to support House Bill 1421, and am always available for questions or follow-up as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Daniels for 2 minutes.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. My name is Ruby Daniels. I'm the president of the Maryland State Family Child Care Association, representing over 4,000 family child care providers across the state and an independent second-year pre-K expansion grantee. I'm here today because I strongly oppose House Bill 1421. While I respect the work of the State Board of Education, I'm deeply concerned that this bill will dismantle the accountability structure of the blueprint for Maryland's future and places all power under one agency. I could be wrong because when I was listening to the sponsor, it's not that way, but this is how I interpret it. The Accountability and Implementation Board was designed to ensure equity and hold all blueprint partners accountable, not just public schools, but private pre-K providers, family child care homes, and community-based programs. Unlike under this bill, the state board would have the sole authority over the blueprint implementation, funding, decisions, and compliance without the independent oversight of the AIB. The shift raises serious concerns. It could slow down funding for private pre-K providers, making it harder to expand access for families. It could sideline the voices of family child care and private pre-K providers who play a critical role in early education. It also creates unnecessary bureaucratic barriers when what we need is collaboration, not control. The blueprint was never meant to be driven by just one agency. It was meant to be a partnership. The state board and the AIB should work together, not just one controlling the other. I urge you to reject House Bill 1421 and instead work together towards a solution that preserves the AIB's independent oversight while fostering stronger collaboration between all stakeholders, public and private alike. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1421. Delegate Jones, House Bill 1483. And we have one online witness that is favorable, Douglas Sibler.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, I'm Delegate Dana Jones, representing District 30A in the House of Delegates, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I come before you today to introduce HB 1483, Public Schools High School Sports Officiating Services Procurement Requirements, which is a mouthful for this is a pay equity bill. HB 1483 would require LEAs to ensure that sports officials for boys and girls sports are paid the same rate. That's it. Early last year, some county constituents, Doug Silber and Jen Murphy, brought an unexpected issue to my attention. Despite existing pay equity laws, high school sports officials for girls sports were being paid less for performing the same work as officiating for boys sports. Currently, pay equity laws aim to prevent pay disparities for male and female officials doing the same job, or in this case, officiating the same game. However, they do not prevent officials, regardless of their gender, from being paid different rates depending on if they are officiating girls' sports versus boys' sports. Maryland Public Secondary School Athletic Association, MPSSAA, set standardized pay rates for high school sports officiating during playoffs statewide. Outside of that framework, local education agencies, LEAs, through contracts with sports associations and other entities, determine payment rates for their officials, and this is important. This has led to inconsistencies between jurisdictions and multiple cases of pay disparities between officials within both girls and boys sports. Particularly, we looked at high school lacrosse, where we found a number of counties with pay parities in lacrosse alone. So again, if you officiate boys lacrosse, you get paid $27 more than officiating girls lacrosse in the same grade. Through my office research, we also uncovered the complex network of connecting LEAs, sports associations, assigners who manage game scheduling logistics, and the officials themselves. Understanding these dynamics was crucial in shaping our approach to this bill. My partner in the Senate, Senator Dawn Guile, and I spent significant time during the interim with our staffs working with MSDE, MPSSAA, and LEAs to ensure we met our legislative intent while being as minimally intrusive as possible to the procurement process. HB 1483 aims to promote pay equity in high school sports officiating by implementing the following requirements. Equal pay standards. Local school systems must reject any bid or proposal that results in different rates of pay or fees for officiating or assigning officials for comparable boys and girls high school sports. 2, simultaneous solicitations. Solicitations for officiating services for similar boys and girls sports must be issued at the same time to ensure fairness in the bidding process. Inclusive bidding options. Local school systems may require that bidders include officiating services for both boys and girls sports with a single proposal. Uniform submission deadlines. If separate solicitations are issued for boys and girls officiating services, they must share the same submission deadline. Finally, collaborative bidding flexibility. Local school systems may also require prospective bidders to partner, ensuring that any bid for boys' sports officiating services is accompanied by corresponding bids for girls' sports. That's a lot. These measures aim to close loopholes in existing pay equity laws and ensure fair compensation practices across high school athletics. In your floor system, you will find numerous letters of support from officials around the state speaking to the need for this legislation. Additionally, this legislation has been voted on and endorsed by the women's legislators of Maryland, and I feel it pertinent to add that the Senate cross-file of this legislation passed unanimously out of EEE with only a co-sponsorship amendment, and also passed unanimously on the Senate floor already. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on HB 1483.
Okay, colleagues, I would also like to note that this is jointly assigned, so we have our colleagues and friends, Delegates Kaiser and Traverse with us. So if either of you have any questions, just pop up to an empty seat. We have one more witness, Doug Sibler, and then we'll take questions for 2 minutes, please. You're on mute, sir. You get to start over, you're on mute.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Okay, I've been muted before. My name's Doug Silber. I'm Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I've been officiating for many, many years, including the state championships on several occasions. If you don't know, Maryland high schools are home to some of the best lacrosse players in the nation. Officiating requires great preparation. We study and master complex rules, attend clinics, train, and work hard to keep games safe and fair. We don't just put on stripes and blow the whistle. Before my recent marriage, my wife was a single mom and a public school teacher, and she still is a public school teacher. But she started officiating to pick up extra cash to make ends meet. Like all officials, she has to buy uniforms, equipment for all kinds of weather, many pairs of shoes to run many miles involved in a single game. We pay membership fees, we volunteer time to recruit and train new officials. But when you add in the mileage getting to and from the games, you barely break even because of the relatively low game fees that we receive. So it was quite upsetting for both my wife and I and many of our colleagues to learn recently that the officials for the similar boys game were being paid substantially more to work a similar game on the same field, the same 6x6 goals, and the same game duration. Many former colleagues have stopped officiating because of the disparity in pay. It's bad enough to be yelled at and sometimes threatened by spectators. We all do it because we love the game, we want to give back, we want to support the girls. But not being treated fairly by the local governments is, for many, the straw that broke the camel's back. One example. Recently, upon learning of the pay disparity, the officials from another county that I work in asked their school system in Maryland simply to bring up their pay to match what the boys officials were receiving, and the county balked and was ready to cancel the entire girls' season. Ultimately, the county realized the unfairness of the pay disparity, adjusted the pay rate to make it equal, and the season was saved. we applaud what Delegate Jones and our co-sponsors are doing, and we ask for a favorable vote on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a couple questions. We'll start with Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Jones, I'm going to still try to wrap my head around the procurement issues in here, but I did have a question on page 2 about the similar sports and occurring in the same season. It's been my experience in life that sometimes boys and girls soccer are a different season just because of the number of fields, or baseball and softball, or even basketball. Sometimes they are in different seasons, even when they are otherwise exactly the same, which seems to be what you're trying to get at. So how does that work?
For the most part, high school sports are all the same. They do run at the same seasons. Many times, the differences in seasons have to do with either club sports or middle school or lower grades. So when we're talking about high school sports, in order to get to the championships and all the other things, are normally the same very season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was just looking this up for some background. Title IX doesn't mandate that equal amount of funds get spent on women's versus men's sports. But I would make the argument that not paying the same rate or not having the same availability for these positions would violate such thing. I just wanted to know what your thoughts on that would be.
Well,
is this a potential?
Delegate Hornberger, I love that you're a member of the team. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
And if you would like a membership to the Women's Caucus, I can get you that application.
Sure, I'll take it.
Any further questions? Delegate Tavares, do you have a question? Okay, Delegate.
I just want to, hold on, let me hear you better. Hold on. I want to make sure something that that was that I didn't really capture here is how is this going through the school system, through MABE or any other of the. I saw the other.
No one came in opposition. Is that what you mean, Delegate?
Yeah, no, I was curious why they didn't comment.
Because they're fans of the legislation? They're not opposed to it?
It was just curious to me because, I mean, I'm a supporter, but, you know, they usually, I've never seen them like, support anything.
Well, I will be honest, Delegate, I believe we could all agree that it's not a good look to have high school lacrosse, and we pay, a jurisdiction would pay $29 more to be an official of boys' high school lacrosse, and then, than women's lacrosse. That makes no sense. It's a real bad look to pay $30 more or $20 more or take fees, leaving those, and it could be a man officiating girls' sports, but it says that we don't value women's sports the same that we value men's sports in high schools. So I would assume it's a bad look.
No, I agree, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you to our friends from the Health and Government Operations
Thank you so
Committee
much
for joining us. Thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1483. Delegate Amprey, House Bill 1446. And is Harry Coker here?
I don't know if the secretary's made it over yet. I'm not sure.
Okay. But you're here.
I'm here. I know
You don't
time.
need backup.
I know we have a busy day, so I know you can read the written testimony for that. For the record, Delegate Marlon Amprey here in support of House Bill 1446, the Come to Maryland Act. Madam Chair and members of the committee, it is an honor to be in front of you today. This bill, I truly believe, comes at the right time. We're at a time in our state where we really need some economic growth. we need more businesses to, number one, stay in Maryland, but also come to Maryland and grow in Maryland. And I think that no better time is there now to focus on ways in which we can attract more businesses to come to Maryland. What House Bill 1446 does, it takes a necessary step forward to expand Maryland's business ventures and economic landscape while championing Maryland's values of diversity and acceptance. Unfortunately, what we're seeing at the national level is we're seeing a move towards not accepting certain communities, moving towards government inefficiencies, and et cetera. So in order to get in front of that issue, I truly believe that we're going to see more and more states that don't have our values work against certain types of company owners and certain types of groups. And I think that in order for us to take advantage of this moment, we should highlight what Maryland offers in order to attract more businesses to come to Maryland. So Secretary's here. What this bill does is it creates a council, a business relocation council, which we're also happy to amend to fold that into the Department of Commerce. But the goal of the bill is to incentivize and assist companies to relocate their headquarters to Maryland to seek refuge from restrictive policies and their current state of operation. I truly believe we're going to see more and more really ridiculous laws and situations where companies are really going to be to the point where they can no longer function because they lose certain credits, they lose certain incentives because of their identity or because of who they currently serve, whether it be underserved communities or communities that are no longer respected by their local state governments. So the goal of this bill is to ensure that Maryland can be a place where we advertise and say, hey, come to Maryland. This is a place where we'll take care of you. And what we do with this bill is if they are receiving any type of benefit or incentive from their current state that they would potentially lose or no longer feel comfortable receiving from that state, we would then work towards finding a way that we could honor that credit in some form or fashion, help them relocate to the state of Maryland with the promise or guarantee that they would stay here for a certain amount of time. Again, I'm open to thoughts, amendments on how we can make that work. Again, what the bill currently has, I am not completely married to, but I think we're at a point where we really got to figure out how we can make this happen. Some of the qualifiers that we've laid out in the legislation that we're also looking to possibly tweak a bit is why the reasons as to why you would need a reason to relocate here and why we would accept you. Whatever laws are going on in your state pose a possible humanitarian crisis or come against your lifestyle or social beliefs, threatens the business, socioeconomic livelihood, or well-being of your company, threaten the work they perform to specifically assist underserved or historically underrepresented communities and other similar situated groups. And again, just being brief, I think that it's important that we look at the current climate of our nation and we figure out ways in which we can support the groups that are in most need. And I think that it's a really good opportunity for us to figure out a way to attract more businesses here. You know, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1446. And I'm open to any questions, and I'll defer the rest of the testimony to our Secretary of Commerce.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, welcome back.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Good afternoon to you all. For the record, I am Harry Coker, Acting Secretary of Commerce for Maryland, and I am here to express our support for House Bill 1446. Not only is our state facing a substantial budget gap that we need to close, but we've also got an unprecedented point in history with respect to federal funding and our federal workforce. But we're also seeing many states adopting policies that are really greatly out of step with our values here in Maryland. And in our state, for example, we know that diversity, equity, and inclusion are strengths and virtues that make us all better. We know that decisions about women's health should be made by women and their doctors, and we know that we must embrace and learn from accurately recorded history because we must understand and learn from past shortcomings. House Bill 1446 will give Maryland a new tool in its economic development toolbox that would not only help us attract businesses to help invest in Maryland, it will not only help us create jobs and grow our economy and increase our competitiveness, it will show what Maryland values, that we are still the free state. This bill will let people of our country know that if they feel that the leadership and policies of their states have turned on them, if their rights are being restricted, if their livelihood and even their safety are threatened, they can find a home right here in Maryland. The tax credit program created through the Come to Maryland Act will provide companies that want to come to Maryland with the financial incentives and insistence that they need to make it possible. We respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 1446. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have a couple questions. We'll start with Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the concept of the bill, the recognition that tax incentives and business climate matters to companies. And I was just reading, so the Department of Commerce, Mr. Secretary, put together a letter that said, for too long, Maryland has been too reliant on the federal government for economic opportunities. Even before the unprecedented actions coming out of Washington, D.C., the Moore-Miller administration recognized the need for a robust, equitable, and competitive economy that is less dependent on federal dollars. A reorientation of our economic base to grow and strengthen the private sector is needed to ensure Maryland's economy remains strong. I think, is that a position that the department certainly is taking in writing, that you guys are taking, and Delegate Ampray, I think, would also take, that we're too reliant on government jobs, and we need to have a bigger private sector base. Is that fair?
Well, go first. Sir, thank you for the question, and I would like to clarify, we really do appreciate the federal funding and the federal jobs that are here, but the influence is outsized. We don't want to lose the federal funding, nor do we want to lose federal jobs, but we do want to grow a more robust and diverse economy, and that means developing new sectors. So we want to expand and create new sectors while at least maintaining the current level of federal funding and employment. That's a challenge, but we're not going to turn our backs on those opportunities from the federal government.
So how does it work in theory? So somebody has a company in, say, South Carolina, that they moved there, chose to relocate there for a variety of reasons, and they decide we don't like South Carolina anymore for whatever reason. It could be because of politics. It could just be because of economics. We'd like to come to Maryland, and they come in and say, we're getting a package that equates to $25 million a year in tax credit or incentive monies from South Carolina. Do we match that? I mean, that's my reading of the bill. It says that in order that we would match their credits and their incentives. Where does that, if we decided to do that, where does that money come from within our existing commerce budget and pool of tax credits?
Yeah, so I'll take the first crack at this one. So I think, again, like I said during our bill presentation, I'm open to changing and altering some of the language in the bill in regards to like matching exactly, right? I think the example I would give is, let's say you are a film company and you have a film company and you're doing a documentary about HBCUs in Alabama, right? And you got a tax credit from that state to do that documentary. The state then says, you know what? We're no longer going to support with that tax credit this HBCU film credit. So you're no longer going to have that. If they were then looking for another state, we would say, hey, come to Maryland. Let's say they had a $5 million tax credit. We might not be able to match that exactly, but hey, we'll offer you something where we can do our best to match it. And of course, it'll be an application process. We have the council that would oversee that process, but we have to do something to say, hey, come to our state. We'll do our best to match that or honor it, whatever that amount might be. And then would there be some kind of promise or some kind of guarantee that they'd have to relocate here, they'd have to do something to say they're gonna stay here for longer than just a quick 3-month blip, et cetera. So that's kind of how we see the bills, is that someone is in a state where they currently they were promised something 4 or 5 years ago, and now this state is now trying to copy and paste certain policies that are coming from down the road, and they want to make sure that they have a viability to continue to have their business run.
So is that a requirement that they want to move to Maryland because of political reasons, or can it just be we want to move to Maryland for any reason and we have a tax credit package from another state? So they could have a tax credit package from California, and they're like, hey, man, California might be the only state in America more progressive than us right now. Maybe. I don't know. I think we got the title.
Yeah.
But pretty close. And those individuals could say, our market has simply shifted. We're not as oriented toward the West Coast market as what we might be to a Mid-Atlantic or East Coast market. We will come to Maryland. You have to import California's tax credit or incentive package, and you've conceded that in some form or fashion. Yeah, it's not fairly well detailed. Right. So does there have to be a predicate of someone saying, I'm moving here for, I'm going to use the word political. I'm not trying to say that in a pejorative way, just for political reasons.
There has to be some type of harm that you are now sustaining, or interpreted harm you are sustaining from the state. So I could see a world where there is a company that is, majority women owned and majority women employees, and now they've passed down new laws that make their access to women's health really difficult, and they're like, hey, we need to find a state that's gonna be more friendly to the needs of this group. So, and again, that council will make that decision, right? So there would be an application process, and there'd be a way in which we would assess how we could determine if this business makes sense in our state, and more so make sure that there's a defined type of harm where they really need to find some kind of economic refuge.
And my final question, I appreciate the clarification, it really does help. Where's the money come from? Because we already have sort of a full suite as the acting secretary. I know he's probably sort of learning on the fly, been there for a short period of time. We have a very full suite of economic tax credits that Commerce administers now that are budgeted in certain ways. Commerce's bill this year is going to eliminate a lot of the ones that are not specifically budgeted or capped, like One Maryland, the job creation tax credit. We're eliminating those. Where does the budgeting or the money come from so that this fund always exists? Or are you simply, I'm not using this in a pejorative way either, cannibalizing other funds? The example you gave, we already have a film tax credit. Now we're going to make sure that this company gets it because they fit the parameters. Or is there going to be new money?
So I've talked to the second floor about this, and there's an opportunity where there is a world where we could use some of the Sunny Day Fund money. It could be appropriated later. Again, this is we're not designating the funds with this bill. This bill will just create the act and create the council. And I think there's a world where we figure out money later. But I think currently the conversations around using the Economic Development Opportunities Program or the Sunny Day funds that we currently have.
Thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Delegate Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. I guess my question is, the types of companies, are there specific types of companies or even size companies that you're looking at that would fit this bill as it pertains to number of employees or gross revenues?
I'll take anybody and everybody. This bill is open to all size companies. I would say that one of the goals is I think we want to have a company that can come and produce more jobs, right? You want to have a company that's gonna come and produce more revenue. Maybe whenever you bring utilizing the example of the film. Whenever you bring a movie set or a documentary in, what often happens is, what do they need? They need hair and makeup. What do they need? They need trailers. So often you see a world where there's other opportunities, economic opportunities for those kind of companies. So I think that the council will determine that, but I think our goal is to have a situation where we're attracting companies that are gonna create more jobs. Again, unfortunately, we have a lot of people that are now leaving the federal government who have great skills. Why not attract companies that tie to that skill set? So I think to answer your question, I don't think there's any type of company that we're necessarily focused on. It's just a company that has found that they can no longer do business in their state because there's some type of economic harm created by the state.
And just for clarification, is this because we talked about DEI, so we're only talking about minority
No, I think that in our conversation, we're just saying that our state is a state that accepts everyone. So we do see a world where there would be people from certain communities that would probably be more likely to look at this as an opportunity, business owners or groups. But I think this is open to anyone who feels as though there's some type of new rules, laws, or systems in their home state where they are now that is now not allowing them to function. But I think we just wanted to highlight that we are a state that welcomes anybody and everybody, no matter your political beliefs, no matter your lifestyles, no matter who you worship, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just have two questions. I'm still trying to figure out how this would work. And similar to what Delegate Buckle was saying, so the tax credits that you would offer under this program could be potentially more because they're tied to other states. So they could potentially be more benefits than someone who isn't claiming harm would be incentivized to come to Maryland.
I'm trying to follow. So you're saying that
So we currently have some tax incentives, benefits for businesses to come to Maryland because we want them here.
Right.
But if they claim harm under this bill, they could potentially have more benefits for claiming harm.
There's a possibility where they could possibly double dip, and I don't. that's not the intent of the bill for double dipping. I think there's a world where it makes sense to maybe add a little bit more of an incentive to come here, because other states offer tax incentives and credits too, right? So in order to give us a more competitive advantage, if we added a little bit, I mean, that makes sense, but that's not the intent of the bill. I think more so the intent of the bill is to more so wave a flag saying, hey, Maryland's open for business. If your state is not giving you what you need, if they're now reneging on promises that they made, we are a state that's open and ready to bring you in and be accepting of whatever you believe, et cetera, and we can offer them the current suite of credits that we offer, but I think the goal here is just to create more incentives for companies to look at Maryland as a place where they can find some refuge.
And trust me, I'm all about attracting businesses to
for
Maryland.
sure.
You know that for sure.
That's
I'm just trying to wrap my head around, because there could be, there's different types of harm that could be, and so I'm not sure how that's being defined, or that will be defined where you could use that as a metric, because it could just be, there's a harm that harms like the business environment, or there's a personal perceived either from a political harm or whatever harm that you had mentioned. So how do you have a metric that defines that can be used?
And that's literally the amendment we're working on to get that language down tight. I think that's the primary amendment that we're working on, to make sure that we figure out a way to make sure that the language there is more thoughtful on how to ensure that we're not excluding anyone, or also making sure that we're thoughtful on how we define that. So
especially without bias.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if this question's way off base, please correct me. I'm trying to gather from all the questions and comments. So would this bill would give a tax incentive to a business who may not be politically aligned in the state they're in, and try to draw them here, and the incentive is based upon ideology?
I wouldn't say it's ideology or politically aligned. I think it's more so, think about, I think the example I gave previously, right? If you are doing a documentary on historically black colleges and universities, that state then says, we are no longer providing funds to companies that are doing things at, diverse institutions, which is what we're literally seeing in DC. So in that situation, that's not a matter of political belief. That's more so a matter of like, I'm doing a documentary about black colleges, but because it's black, I can no longer get funds. So I think it's not necessarily that, it's not about political beliefs. It's about like, you have to prove that because you walked into a state expecting some type of incentive or program, that state has now dissolved that program, and now you're looking for another state that would be more welcoming to your whatever business you have.
Yeah, and that just promises made, promises not kept scenario, nothing to do with political ideology or anything like that, right? So this has nothing to do with any type of harm beyond a state made a promise to you or commitment to you on a tax incentive, they didn't keep that commitment.
So there's that example, or if there's something where a state has now moved to I think the other thing I gave earlier was reproductive rights, or you are a state that's now, there's certain things that no longer match the business's profile or who they serve or what they believe in, et cetera.
But that's not related to the business executing, their mission. That's more about political preference or preference tied to, maybe some of their employees' preferences, right? But that doesn't necessarily bring harm to their company, right?
I mean, I think it's a conversation we can have offline to get more into the weeds on like what makes.
I know time is short today.
I see the conversation that you're going down, and I think it's important that we figure out language to make sure it doesn't do that whole political preference thing, which I understand where you're going.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1446. House Bill 1543. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem and Mr. Weintraub.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. For the record, Delegate Dana Stein on House Bill 1543, which is a bill that applies to competitively awarded Class B retail licenses, which are only held by a handful of bars and restaurants. Now, under current law, there are processes in place for the Maryland Lottery to consider relocation requests for traditional lottery licensees, for example, retail sellers of scratch-off tickets, Powerball tickets, et cetera. But there's no such regulatory flexibility for the smallest Class B retail sportsbook licenses to ask the lottery to move to a different location. Canton Gaming LLC is a locally owned business that was awarded Class B2 retail sports wagering facility licenses from the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Commission in February 2023 for 2 retail sports books in the Towson Green Turtle in Baltimore County and the Canton Green Turtle in Baltimore City. The company officially closed their Towson retail sportsbook on February 9th, 2025, and would like to move to another Baltimore County location in Pikesville, a few miles away. The Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency has advised that a statutory changes is needed to permit any relocations or address changes of a Class B2 retail sportsbook. So what this bill does is it permits but does not require the commission to approve a written request to relocate a competitively awarded Class B2 retail sports wagering facilities licensed premises within the same county and subject to all existing statutory radius restrictions and other provisions of the sports wagering law. The bill would not allow a physical relocation request to a different county, and it would also require an applicant to abide by all existing radius restrictions in the current law. Maryland Lottery and Gaming has an amendment that says that the proposed new location needs to be approved by the Sports Wagering Application Review Commission, which we are fine with. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Weintraub?
Chair Atterbury, members of the committee, for the record, Jason Weintraub here on behalf of Canton Gaming. I think Delegate Stein summed up the bill pretty well. We're in support of House Bill 1543 to give the lottery a little bit more regulatory flexibility that they don't currently have. As Delegate Stein mentioned, this would allow their sports book to move a couple miles away, and it's a location that's currently closed. So we would urge the committee for a favorable report and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so this is just a relocation of
Just
the
the
same business.
Relocation, no change in ownership, just to move an address.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1543. House Bill 1391, Delegate Young, and is Sean Rushing here? Come on up.
Hey. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. Delegate Young here for my favorite topic, artificial intelligence. The purpose of House Bill 1391 is to require MSDE to develop and update K-12 guidance on artificial intelligence. It establishes a list of approved AI tools for classroom use. It mandates professional development in AI, and it creates a task force on artificial intelligence and K-12 education for it to study and to make recommendations. There are amendments from the Senate side. I'm not going to dig into those today, but we will talk for now just about the bill as introduced. Currently, Maryland law does not provide a comprehensive policy framework on AI integration into our K-12 education system. Local school systems may use their own technology guidelines. However, there is no statewide standard that specifically addresses AI development, deployment, implementation, and privacy. Frankly, it's the Wild West. It is the worst kept secret in education that just about everybody is using it in some way, shape, or form. But there's no guidance as it pertains to AI ethics, as it pertains to data privacy for our students, and as it pertains to curriculum integration. AI-based tools are rapidly emerging in the K-12 settings, and we need to develop these uniform guidelines to ensure safety, to ensure responsibility, and to ensure effective usage that has positive outcomes, educational outcomes for our students. What's also true is that the Career and Technical Education Committee, the CTE, that's not the right thing. Anyway, the CTE work is evolving. It is increasingly focusing on advanced technology and literacy therein, including AI readiness for the future workforce. We need growth in our state. We've heard our governor sit in this very chair and talk about how we should be leaders when it comes to AI, when it comes to quantum, but the reality is we have not positioned our education system to fill those jobs in those businesses when they do come. We have to begin to make those decisions in this committee now, and we cannot afford to move slowly. So with that being said, I urge a favorable report because I do believe that AI, while it has been a buzzword, if we actually start thinking about the practical uses, the ways that we can put it into place right now to teach our students, to teach our teachers, to teach our administrators, and how we can make our education system from the top down more effective and more efficient, then we'll move in a better way and we'll have that growth. And lastly, one more piece I want to mention is collaborative time. We've heard, all of us know about how that has been pushed back in a significant way under this budget to solve our budgetary problems. Well, if we're not going to give our teachers that collaborative time so that way they can have the time they need to prepare for class, to work with their peers, to do data analysis on their students, then we need to give them a tool that can make them more efficient, that can make them more effective and get that same work done with less time, while at the same time upskilling them and our entire education system to be more effective. So with that being said, Madam Chair, I will respectfully ask for a favorable report. Thank you so much. Ms. Mennel.
Mr. Tucker. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Committee. I'm Sean Fritz Rushing. I'm the Assistant State Superintendent of Education over Operations and Administration. This is my brilliant colleague.
Hello, I'm Erin Senior. I'm the Director of Digital Learning and School Library Media at the Maryland State Department of Education.
We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. As this legislation will guide students in harnessing the potential of artificial intelligence while mitigating the risk, the Maryland State Department of Education and the Maryland State Board fully endorse House Bill 1391. This bill will require MSDE to work with the AI task force to implement a framework and help guide this framework into the school districts. We will be in charge of professional development for our teachers for artificial intelligence. We will integrate AI into workforce development, as well as establishing a reporting structure to ensure accountability.
I'm pleased to be here to discuss artificial intelligence and how we can ensure digital literacy and safety for all Maryland students, educators, and families. This cross-filed bill, with some amendments that we have been working with Senator Hester extensively on, will strengthen the current Maryland State Department of Education and local school system efforts to foster informed understanding of artificial intelligence so all Marylanders become responsible digital citizens who have the necessary knowledge to safely and properly utilize the digital tool. One of the most important amendments to the bill streamlines resource management by removing the mandated annual AI toolkit. Instead, the Maryland State Department of Education will expand its existing public-facing AI information hub, which already features resources for educators and families and will soon include dedicated sections for students.
Other amendments are that MSDE will take lead on the AI workforce development with our educational partners, and we request to move this implementation timeline back to mid-2026.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Delegate Fair?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill forward. So you know, I've told you offline, we're so lucky to have you here in Ways and Means looking at these complex issues, because we need to be at least on par with where we're at in technology, and we are far, far behind, and we're not getting any closer or catching up at all. So thank you for bringing the bill forward. I did just want to touch on the fiscal note, and maybe if you don't want to comment on it, you know, feel free to pass it off to one of your panelists. But the $1 million price tag that came with this task force, I was going through, it is not the intention of your legislation to suggest that MSDE and MSDE alone should be in charge of developing this this framework for really how we're looking at AI. Is that fair?
That's fair. The task force would be, tasked with making those recommendations in a significant way, and I would turn it over to my panel because I do believe some of the amendments address the fiscal note.
Okay, great. Could you address those, the financial pieces?
Yes, we are still working with the bill's cross-file sponsor, Senator Hester, on amending the fiscal note. The fiscal note we have now is around an annual cost of $575,000. That includes 3 state pins and 1 contractor pin. We are working on ways of using economies of scale to lower this.
Down from the 8 people that are contemplated in the fiscal note currently?
That fiscal note has been amended, so we have 3 pin staff and 1 contractual staff that would end in 2027 when the AI task force is complete.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Young, for bringing this to us. My question is for the representatives from the Maryland State Department of Education. And looking at the request, can you identify any other states or a state that will have this program in place right now?
That is a fantastic question. I cannot think of a state off the top of my head, but I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay, so Maryland would take the lead.
To my knowledge, yes.
Well, in some respects, and I should have this, I can certainly get it to you as well, but there are absolutely states that are moving with deliberate speed when it comes to implementing artificial intelligence. Maryland should, however, take advantage of the fact that that is still a very small handful of states that have done real work in that regard. And so if we take the lead, then we, again, position ourselves to also attract a whole lot of business that can come and support this work. And then the residual of showing that we're doing this work will also contribute to that as well.
Okay, I recognize that this is at the state level, but are there programs or anything in place at the post-secondary level, for example, through MHAC or some other higher education entities that will have the similar issues, concerns?
So not in a structured sense is my understanding, but we could talk to MHAC about that. But we do know that Morgan has their AI department. There's also a department over at UMBC that I've been in communication with. They actually, I think, testified both of those last year, both of those entities on the same bill, different version of it. So it does exist, and I do know that some of our institutions are leading when it comes to artificial intelligence and would be contemplated to be a part of this.
And my
work.
last quick question for the state, Maryland State persons. Within the curriculum of some classes, when you think about teachers and their requirements and standards, there are some standards that currently exist that are not codified, but more or less optional within each classroom or each LEA, correct?
Yes, there are. There's also school library media specialists teach digital literacy and media literacy standards. So AI is another tool that fits in with those and could be woven and incorporated into what you're already doing within your classroom. So you're not teaching necessarily standalone, but included in what is occurring.
Thank you.
And to answer your earlier question, Delegate, I would point to Colorado is one that stands out.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1391. Delegate Ebersol, House Bill 1513. And if Gail Martin, Terrence Kavanaugh, or Helen Rodriguez Latana are here, please come forward.
Where you like? Take the center.
I didn't listen to the number, Madam Chair. Which one are we on? Which number bill are we on, please? 1513, thank you. Well, good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and the members of the Ways and Means Committee who care so much about education, and I do too. I'm Eric Ebersol, and I'm here to talk about House Bill 1513. In January, President Trump issued an executive order revoking President Biden's policy that barred ICE arrests from sensitive locations nationwide. This includes our schools. It has created a serious problem for many immigrants who now fear for their safety, directly impacting immigrant children's school attendance and performance. In fact, CASA representatives have informed me that many immigrant children are now not attending school out of fear. Further, parents say goodbye to their children when they drop them off in the morning, unsure as to whether or not they will be reunited with their children in the afternoon. From my vantage point, teachers have anecdotally reported that immigrant children appear unfocused and preoccupied at school, inhibiting their performance. The culture of fear is pervasive. This policy directly contributes to poor classroom performance and attendance. Currently, right now in Maryland, there are 3 counties that are in jail enforcement contract agreements with ICE under the 287G program: Cecil, Frederick, and Hartford. Through these contracts, local law enforcement officers of these counties can interrogate, arrest, and issue detainers on suspected undocumented persons. With the removal of schools as sensitive locations under 287G program, local police officers acting as ICE agents can enter schools and investigate and detain immigrant students. Since local police officers are inherently more familiar with their communities than federal ICE agents, students in counties where the 287G cooperation exists attend school at a different risk. The risk is more poignant and threatening when the potential use of even more familiar school resource officers and security officers. They are stationed at the school and they interact with the students on a daily basis. And there's nothing in the 287G program that prohibits a school resource officer who is nominated by a local enforcement agency from working with ICE agents and allowing SROs the ability to arrest, detain, and question students. This is certainly furthering fear and increasing risk of harm to our immigrant children and their education in our schools. In addition, SROs are tasked with creating credibility and trust among the students in the school, as well as being positive mentor figure for the students. The potential by SROs for 287G action and the increased access that would go with it will impede this critical part of their job. If we pass House Bill 1513, it will add a necessary barrier, prohibiting SROs and school security employees from engaging in federal immigration investigations and enforcement functions under the 287Gs at a public school, regardless of the county's outlook with their own law enforcement. In doing so, this bill closes access that could potentially be exploited and helps to keep the SRO in their role as a student advocate. By enacting 1513, we will work to ensure safety for all children at Maryland Public Schools, affirming that Maryland Public Schools remain a caring and nurturing environment for all Maryland students so they can learn safely and comfortably. Please, I urge a favorable report.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gail Martin. I am here representing the NASW Maryland chapter and specifically the Social Work and Schools Committee of that chapter. I don't know about you, but when I was in school, we didn't have SROs, and if you're over 40, and I'm not asking, you probably didn't have SROs either. I want to thank Delegate Ebersole for his powerful introduction to this bill. I wanted to add that when those children kiss their parents goodbye in the car, those children don't know if they're going to see their parents that night either. And that's the problem when they get into their classrooms. When children are depressed, they often end up in the office of the school social worker. When children are worried, they end up in the office of the school social worker. Sometimes depressed and worried children don't just sit there shut down and distracted, they act out. When children are absent, the school social worker is often the one who is knocking on their doors. Please consider a favorable report to this bill so that our children can feel safe and can learn. They did not ask to be here. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee, Terry Kavanaugh here on behalf of SEIU Local 500. SEIU Local 500 represents 23,000 workers across Maryland, including over 10,000 educational support professionals in Maryland Public Schools. Among our members are security personnel that protect our students. We stand in strong support of House Bill 1513, which seeks to prohibit school resource officers and school security employees from engaging in federal immigration investigation and enforcement functions within Maryland Public Schools. Our public schools should be places where students can focus on their education without fear of immigration enforcement actions disrupting their academic experience. The presence of school security personnel is meant to protect students from threats to their safety, not to serve as an extension of federal immigration authorities. 1513 ensures that school resource officers and security officers remain dedicated to their primary mission, protecting students and fostering a positive school climate. Research has shown that when students feel safe at school, they are more likely to succeed academically and socially. We ask for a positive, favorable report on 1513. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick questions. Did you, since Frederick County obviously is one that does, have you reached out to any of the counties that do participate to ask for if there had any considerations, any feedback on this bill?
They didn't weigh in, so I have there's no testimony here from them, so that's all I have.
And then second, do you know how, so if you have someone who's a multi-language learner, of what ages they can be in our school system?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
So multi-language learners, like students with certain disabilities.
I understand what they are. I don't understand what you're asking about.
How old can they be? How old are they? How long are they in our school system? Like, what are the ages that would be considered?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure this is on the bill.
No,
But
well, it's on the bill,
I'm not sure
it's-
the answer off the top of my head, but I think 21 is the age.
Correct. Immigrant
Children.
children. I'm not asking to ask, I'm just saying that they are allowed to be in the school system up to 21. So your intention is, even if they had some kind of outstanding situation, if they come from another school district and they're 18, 19, 20 years old, that you would not want the SRO cooperating with ICE if there was any danger or situation that would warrant cooperation.
I think you used the word danger.
If they presented a danger to
Can I
students.
Can I answer the question?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. You're talking about danger. We're not talking about dangerous students. We're talking about students being investigated because there is some sort of, they're not documented. You're talking about reportable offenses, and I know you pay attention that this bill is not about reportable offenses. It's about them cooperating with ICE. They would be normal law enforcement, and if there was something that normal law enforcement needed to act on, they could do that. But they can't be part of a 287G investigation.
Okay, so if there was a reportable offense that ended up being part of an ICE investigation, you would not allow them into the schools?
I'm not sure what reportable offenses are part of ICE investigations, if you don't mind me asking?
If any of the felony, if they had done any of the.
That's a reportable offense. That's not about them being immigrants. You're conflating two things here.
That's the 287G actually goes after ones that, individuals that have some kind of criminal record. They're not just for enforcement.
I would submit to you, given the current administration, that may not be absolutely true in the future.
During how we deal with it in Frederick County, and there's absolutely, I've reached out to our sheriff about this bill. There's nothing going on in the schools. No one is being targeted. They're not doing investigations at this school at this time. So I'm trying to figure out what the legislation is aiming to do.
Keep ICE from initiating a 287G investigation by using a school resource officer or a school security officer. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill forward. What we're talking about here is philosophically, schools are designed for one thing, that's learning. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, absolutely.
And students are unfortunately being put right in the middle of these culture wars that are occurring in Washington, and we are risking not just their physical safety, but also we're risking their education. Can you talk about what happens to students who are under constant fear and risk? You talked a little bit about the missing school, but I want to hear a little bit about what it's like being in school trying to operate.
There's a term in education called available to learn. Okay, and students need a lot of things to be available to learn. They need a full stomach, they need a good home life that they're coming home from, but they also need to feel safe in the building, okay? And we do a lot of things to make students feel safe in the building, but I'm gonna suggest to you that if schools are no longer considered a safe location, and 287G in various counties, and who knows if we'll get more or fewer, would actually make students feel less safe. And we need to make sure, as I say, SROs have a job to do. Part of their job is to engender some trust so that they can be advisors to students to help them understand the law and what law enforcement does in a non-threatening way. Well, this could place them in a much more threatening situation, and students, I think generally CASA is telling me kids just aren't coming to school these days. I don't know if this will help. I hope they'll recognize the difference here.
And just generally speaking, is there any data that suggests that when children are under stress, they underperform in school?
You could find hundreds of reports that say that.
Fair enough. And my last question is just simply, this bill in no way targets or demonizes SROs. It simply separates, right, SROs from the ICE process.
Actually, I think it does the opposite. I think it makes SROs much more the advocate for the students and much more the students' advocate in the building.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Delegate Ebersol, you and Delegate Miller are much better versed than I am in sort of the nomenclature and the terminology of some of the education stuff. I'm just going to give you some potential hypotheticals because I like the concept of the bill. I do not like the concept of people coming into schools and tracking people who aren't otherwise doing anything wrong and coming in and rounding them up or using the school as a collection point because we know we'll be there. I don't like that. I would never support that. But what I also don't like is the hypothetical concept of, and if I'm indulged for a moment, I'll tell you part of the reason why. I had a cousin very close to me who was a police officer in Fairfax County, Virginia. First year or two on the job, 15, 16 years ago, one of the first things he got called to respond to of significance, you know, nighttime significance, a townhouse, I think it was out in Falls Church, maybe near Chantilly. MS-13 has a significant presence in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. They certainly do. And he was called to a situation where a young woman was beheaded. He was the first person through the door. Everyone else was gone. He found the body. She was a juvenile. She was beheaded by another juvenile. Affiliated with MS-13 as part of a gang ritual, part of a gang situation, scarred him for life. You still, you know, if you mention it to him at any point in time, it's scarring for him. And so even though a very, very small percentage of children, and I think a very small percentage of immigrant children are involved in these horrible activities, I wonder sometimes if we can't create some exemptions to these types of bills, because I'd support a bill 1,000% that says school resource officers aren't there to sort of help identify, hey, I think this kid doesn't have papers.
Exactly.
Let's go get him. But I don't want to create legal liabilities and situations for them if they say, hey, ICE is here on a valid court warrant, court detain, or something approved by a judge that says, you've got Joe Blow in period 3 down in your phys ed room, and Joe Blow is an active suspect that's turned over us for, in my example, MS-13 involvement, and we're here legally to get Joe Blow. I don't want to track him down out on the street because I'm afraid he may be armed, he may be dangerous. I don't want to have to go into his home and burst through the door where he's got young children. I know I'm giving you a hypothetical, but those things happen. And is there a way that those of us of good faith maybe could craft some exemptions that said, hey.
Let's be clear here. This is not saying that ICE with a warrant can't come into a building and come get a kid, because that is what
But
the
it's
current
saying the
administration
SRO,
says.
but does it
says
say
they cannot enlist the
SRO
help of the
wouldn't help?
SRO in finding them or identifying them, yeah.
And that's where I'd like to have an exemption, because if I was an ICE officer that says I have a legal reason to come get someone who I believe is potentially violent, who potentially has, and that's how we restrict it. We wouldn't let him just come in and say, I want Paul out of period 3 because he's undocumented. I want Paul out of period 3 because he's an ongoing suspect and we believe him to be
Wouldn't that be something for local law enforcement to take on themselves?
It could be, but we have other counties that say they don't want their local law enforcement to participate with ICE.
Well, that's what an SRO is.
Well, so if I came through the door, if my SRO said, that's great, I can't talk to you. I know who Paul is. I know where he is. I know where he may be hanging out. I can't talk to you. Get away from me. I have to go into the principal's office and shut the door. I'm legally banned from cooperating. That's not what either one of us want. I don't want that. I don't think you want that.
What if they're wrong?
Well, then that's a job.
Let's take the hypothetical a step further. What if they have the wrong person?
Okay. It's an extremely imperfect world. And sometimes we have to accept that in the administration of law. If they got the wrong person, I don't think that person's going to be convicted and deported if he comes out and says, you're looking for Paul Jones, I'm Paul Smith.
Can you imagine the trauma on that student?
I can. I can also imagine the trauma if that student is allowed to run through the school unhindered and injures other students, and frequently injures other students from their own communities.
We are not stopping.
Okay, is there a question that's being answered?
I think the answer is that the hypothetical is we don't want them to do anything anything, even if it's a violent criminal, even if ICE is legally authorized to be there, we don't want our individuals to participate. Is that fair?
No.
Okay. Do you have a question? Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess my question is tied around, I mean, you're referencing the 287G program. That program is, because you'd reference that in your testimony, and that
I didn't say I was open to it. I said I know it exists.
Well, I said you referenced it. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize. So you referenced that program, but that program would never ever be applied to school, because that's a program where somebody is detained at the detention center, and then the detention center would then notify ICE, and then they would make a determination whether or not to pick up and deport the person. So that wouldn't have any application to SROs at all. Isn't that so?
So you're saying the bill's unnecessary?
I'm saying 287G program you referenced would not be relevant, because school resource officers would never ever be involved, because the 287G program is a program that's implemented at the detention center. And then what happens is, if there's somebody who the detention center has in custody for committing a crime, they make a determination whether or not to notify ICE, and ICE will only pick up at the detention center.
So what you're doing is you're looking
So
for...
I'm just referencing very specifically your...
Is it a question?
Yes, my question is, you were referencing specifically the 287G program.
Do you want to take that out and have it say the ICE action?
I mean, that's perfectly fine.
I mean, if you're correct, and that's a technicality here, what we're saying is we don't want ICE to be able to enlist the help of a school resource officer or a school security officer in action in a building, even if they're warranted. We don't want them to enlist their help.
My question is only tied to the 287G program.
All right, well, we can check that out.
I'm making sure we're muddying the waters on that.
We can check out the appropriateness. I should tell you that I worked very hard to get answers to those questions before I put this bill in, and there weren't any. So we went ahead and put it in its plainest fashion. So if there's some way to, to touch it up so that it does what it's supposed to do, I'd be happy to entertain that.
I understand. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Ebersol, I think, and this is a question, is what you are trying to do, because what Delegate Griffith said is correct.
Okay.
That currently the 287G program is if someone is detained and booked, and if that county, like Frederick, Cecil, or Hartford, they have entered into an MOU, ICE and the sheriffs have an MOU. So if somebody is detained because they have allegedly committed some sort of crime, then the sheriff can say, we also have identified this individual as not being here legally, and so we are working with ICE. Is what you are trying to do in this bill to say that the local sheriffs cannot enter into an MOU under the 287G program to enter into a school, which in theory they could do. They could say, we're going to team up with the local sheriffs, go into the schools, now that we've got this new administration nationally, and we're going to try to get kids who are not here legally. That in theory could happen. So is what you are trying to say, sheriffs, you cannot enter into an MOU with the local sheriffs under this 287G program and go into schools. Is that what you were trying to say? And I think the answer to that would be yes.
Okay.
Yes, is that correct?
Mine was less restrictive even. It just said that if the sheriff does that, if they find it possible to do that, they would be acting on behalf of ICE, and they couldn't enlist the help of the SRO or the school resource officer in the building.
And what I will share is that my colleague said that, we live in a reasonably imperfect world, but it is not reasonable that a child be separated from their parent, or that a parent go looking for their child and their child is no longer there, they're not coming home from school. Do you think that this bill is necessary to possibly prevent that harm here in the state of Maryland?
That one's yes. That one's an absolute yes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I will also share that I believe you are correct, that there are children who are not going to school currently because of this fear. I have been in my nail salon where the nail techs, their children are scared to go to school. They're scared for their friends. My oldest son came to me and said, Mom, Does this mean that one day so-and-so, and he has no idea what somebody's status is, he's just going off their ethnicity and their nationality, does this mean they might not come back to school? And I said, well, I don't know their family situation, but, so our kids are thinking about this because this is going on nationally, and I think that you are correct in stating that it does place, and your panel is correct, a stress on kids. I think they are actively thinking about this. So thank you for the legislation,
Thank you.
Delegate.
Thank you for your comments and your questions.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to make sure I got this straight. So if a law enforcement officer, ICE agent would go in to arrest someone that's in a school that could be possibly harm in the school, cause problems in the school, you would say he wouldn't be able to talk to the SRO officer to identify that person could have a gun or whatever.
That's correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How would you feel, let me ask you this. If an if a United States citizen was in a school with a gun, would you be okay with the police officer to go in and help arrest this individual that's in the school?
It could be a bigger bill, and I really don't think the SRO should be doing that.
So I just want to clarify.
But that's not on the bill, but you've asked me for an opinion, and I've given it to you.
Right. So I just want to clarify. So you're saying if it's a United States citizen, what would you say? You don't think that they would be entitled to have an SRO officer to help?
You've asked the question twice, and I've answered it once.
And what was your answer? I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
I'm saying it's not on the bill.
I understand, but I think it's a valid question.
Yeah, offline.
All right, thank you.
Please answer the question. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you. I get to stay for a different one now.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1513. Delegate Ebersol, House Bill 1140.
Yes, my other area of expertise, gambling.
And let's see, Brad Rifkin.
It's just going to be me.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1140. I've introduced this legislation to combat the proliferation of illegal online casinos, which are ripping off Maryland citizens and ripping off the taxpayers at the same time. Maryland residents are conned into wagering an estimated $6 billion on the black market websites every year, including so-called sweepstakes casinos, which claim to simply be sweepstakes contests, but are in fact unregulated and untaxed gambling. These online casinos, which are often based offshore, evade consumer protections, responsible gaming, and anti-money laundering requirements to which gambling in Maryland would have otherwise be subject. Players report never getting their money back. And most disturbing, there's no prohibition against minors playing these games, which offer cartoonish animation and dangle million-dollar jackpots. And these illegal online casinos present unfair competition to our state's legal, highly regulated, and economically, for us, important casinos. I applaud the efforts to date of the State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency and the Attorney General's Office, who are working to combat this type of illegal gambling. The legislation clarifies that online real money sweepstakes casinos constitute illegal gambling and establishes penalties for operating or facilitating unregulated online gaming. This bill also makes sure that the entities supplying black market casinos are often tied to organized crime syndicates abroad, cannot be licensed to Maryland, even legally. We cannot tolerate a situation where we grant a gaming license to a company which is supplying illegal games as well. The legislation will force these illegal competitors out of our state and provide a powerful deterrent to offshore and domestic illegal online gaming from entering our state. I will point out that Lottery and Gaming has actually weighed in on this one, not just information. They are in favor of this bill.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Brad Rifkin. On behalf of Light and Wonder here today in support of the bill, thank you, Delegate Ebersol, for your stewardship. And this committee is acutely aware of the issue. You heard it from Lottery and Gaming at the onset of session in their briefings. Madam Chair, in your iGaming bill, you testified to how rampant the illicit market is in the state to the tune of $6 billion annually. And that illicit market is cloaked under the veil of sweepstakes casinos. Sweepstakes casinos that are operating without any guardrails, operating without consumer protections, operating without paying their fair share in taxes, operating without any problem gaming restrictions, and doing so while cannibalizing the existing market. And that, simply put, cannot continue. This bill is to support the efforts of lottery and gaming, who have issued multiple cease and desists to sweepstakes casinos over the interim. And in addition to your bill file, you'll see the letter of support that they sent in on this bill. In addition, this bill also says that if you are operating in an illegal market, for instance, a state that's sponsored by terrorism, or you're partnering with entities that are banned in certain markets, for instance, sweepstakes casinos, you should not take the ill fruits of those gains to fund your legal operations in the state and obtain a license. Simply put. In addition, your bill file has a letter from the American Gaming Association, who supports this bill, a letter from an expert that talks about the proliferation of money laundering and human trafficking as a result of the illicit market. And you will hear from the sweepstakes folks that come in after me to talk about how this is about Starbucks rewards or Marriott's rewards programs. That's not what this bill is. And frankly, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. It's illicit gaming, and we respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
We have two unfavorables, Josh White and Jeff Ifra. I may have not pronounced that correctly.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Josh White from KO Public Affairs. On behalf of VGW Group, an Australian publicly traded company and pioneer in the online social games. Since 2012, VGW has provided free-to-play digital entertainment enjoyed by thousands of Marylanders. Social gaming is not gambling. VGW games are always free to play, and just like Candy Crush, players can purchase in-game tokens for enhanced gameplay, but these tokens have no real value and cannot be redeemed for money. Additionally, VGW uses sweepstakes promotions the same way that McDonald's and Microsoft do, and used as a marketing tool where players never pay for a chance to win. But this bill is so broad that it can unintentionally harm well-known sweepstakes promotions used by retailers, restaurants, and other businesses. VGW employs over 150 compliance professionals focused on anti-money laundering, fraud prevention, cybersecurity, and consumer protection. We enforce strict 21 and over age verification, self-exclusion tools, and best-in-class responsible gaming policies. Madam Chair, this committee is a leader in digital entertainment, and yet this bill is based on misconceptions that would eliminate a well-regulated and legal form of digital entertainment, while pushing Marylanders towards unregulated offshore platforms. A better approach is regulation, not prohibition. We believe the committee could adopt consumer protections, retain economic in-state benefits, and preserve a popular digital entertainment industry. VGW stands ready to work with all of you to achieve that goal.
Thank you. Last year I was here working in support of the iGaming bill, and I hope that that has some success this year. A lot of our clients and operators are very thankful for all the hard work that went into that bill, and of course we hope we can maintain some progress on the Senate side and appreciate your support. This bill, of course, sort of cobbles together a whole bunch of different things in the name of protection from everything you heard, from organized crime to money laundering and drug trafficking and human trafficking, if that wasn't enough. Certainly, you know that online gaming without a license currently is illegal. That's why you're introducing a bill to legalize it. And obviously the casinos were here last year with me testifying in support of that bill. What this bill tries to do is try to reestablish something that's unnecessary, which is that online gaming is not legal, and therefore we need a bill. And while we're talking about online gaming, which hopefully again will become legal soon, let's talk about sweepstakes. We're only here to talk on behalf, I'm here on behalf of the Social and Promotional Games Association, just to talk about this narrow issue of online sweepstakes. Obviously everything that Delegate Ebersol and and the lobbyist that was with him on behalf of Light and Wonder say regarding illegal offshore casino gambling, we obviously agree with. There's no argument there. The problem here, just as my colleague just said, is this bill is so broad in what it defines, is it attempts to essentially do away with something that's legal in Maryland. So online gaming currently, casino gambling is illegal, but promotions are legal. So we already have a Maryland statute. 13-305 provides the commercial law on promotions and sweepstakes. And by the way, it permits what Mr. White's client does today in Maryland. So this is a bill that seeks to make something that's legal in Maryland illegal. It's not just simply a bill that seeks to reiterate that illegal casino gambling should remain illegal. And because of that, we oppose this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. White, so you represent BGW?
BGW, yes, ma'am.
BGW. Okay, so you mentioned that your, the sweepstakes have age verification and some other player protections. How do they go about the age verification, and what other protections do they do for the sweepstakes?
Yeah, they actually use forms of ID to make sure that folks are over 21. I believe it's driver's license and other forms of identification to make sure that they are over 21.
I recently read a Washington Post article specifically about the GW that said that they do not use that. It's an Australian-based company, and that they just use email verification. So are you saying that is not accurate?
Well, they do make sure that everybody is over 21. That is correct.
Okay. And you're saying they do that with an ID?
Yes, ma'am. Let me.
Because it's my understanding that that is not the case.
So,
Can I comment on that as well? The same suppliers, VGW uses the same suppliers that DraftKings, FanDuel, and other online operators in the state of Maryland use to verify identity. In fact, this bill would actually punish any supplier that provides any support to any online sweepstakes operator. So the very suppliers that are identifying our age in Maryland would be punished under this bill if they continued to help support retail and promotional sweepstakes that are otherwise permissible under the law. That would extend to they use the same payment processors, they use the same identity verification, they use the same geolocation suppliers. This is not an underground offshore industry at all. Now, the online gaming industry that's operating illegally is offshore and does operate underground and doesn't do any of those things. But this is all being swept together under one broad basket.
So when we were talking about sweepstakes, because I don't play any of this stuff. So when you're talking about sweepstakes, can I play the game and can I win money?
Yes.
Pay money and I can win money.
You don't have to spend money. I drew up a picture here. It's a little small from there, sorry, but I'll try to submit this for the record. But this is just a game that I play when I go get coffee at Quarry Lake at the Starbucks there. And during the winter and during the summer, Starbucks has a sweepstakes game. So every time you buy a coffee, you get points, and you can use those points to win Marriott gift cards. Marriott had a program like this for the Taylor Swift concert. And the more times you stay, the more entries you get, and those convert into points that you can then use online to win money. Now, they always say no purchase necessary, but we all know that the more coffees you buy, and I always drink 3 to 5, then you get 3 to 5 tokens per day to play this game. And
So I don't drink coffee, so
tea?
no.
All right,
So if I'm playing Chumba or Lucky Land or Global Poker, that screams gambling. I have to pay money to pay those games, is that right?
No.
You don't pay money, but I can win money.
Correct.
Okay. You represent
BGW, yes.
BGW. I keep
Yes.
wanting to say C, I don't know why. BGW. So do I have to pay money to play those games?
No.
But I can win money?
Yes, but you can actually do it by no purchase. You're free to play. You can win And you can also have enhanced gameplay. That's what also people buy through tokens. It's just like Candy Crush and many other apps that are on, that you play on your games you play on your phone. If you want to get to the next certain levels that people want to do, they can make in-app purchases to do that.
Okay, I actually don't even play Candy Crush. Can you win money for playing Candy Crush? No? I didn't think so. Okay, so, so for VGW, Connecticut, Michigan, and Delaware have identified what you offer as online gaming and have asked the company to stop because it is online gaming. Is that fair to say?
They define it as online gaming, but we say that it is not. Social games are not gambling. It's not the same thing. We understand why the states want to do that, but we're asking Maryland to take a closer look at this. As a matter of fact, in your bill, Madam Chair, on HB 17, you actually have a section in there about studying exactly this thing to find out what exactly is happening, how the state could benefit by having licensed, regulated companies that follow the rules and that can actually be beneficial towards the state on a revenue basis as well.
So my last question, what differentiates a social game from online gaming?
Sure. So a social game, so Candy Crush, I know it's a game you don't play, but I watch my wife play it sessionally, usually while I'm talking to her. And the way that game works is you play it, and it's like a puzzle. Things are falling, and you're trying to beat whatever it is. And you can play for free. But if you want to skip a level, or if you want to get this little man, they have this little cute little monster. It's always in jail, and she's always trying to get it out. And so the only way you can get that out is by getting to certain levels. It's very cute, I promise you. So if you try to get that thing out, because it like makes little faces and it's like upset and sad. So if you want to get that out, you can pay money to get that out. Okay, so that is in the App Store, that's in the Play Store, and that takes money. Now you can't win money, so you might wonder, well, how does Candy Crush make hundreds of millions of dollars a year? Because, unfortunately, people want to let that thing out of jail, and people want to skip levels, and people want to get to the end, and all of those things cost money. Now, they don't cost a lot of money, but they cost money. Now, you can play that game for free, but you only get a certain amount of time. After you run out of your time, you're going to have to wait a day or an hour until you can play again to get that little thing out of jail. Someone thought of this. That's social gaming. So you can play for free, and you can spend money, but you're never winning prizes. With free-to-play promotions and sweepstakes, which again, Maryland law permits under 13-305G, there are 6 requirements in order to qualify as a legal sweepstakes in Maryland. And that's already the law, and this bill doesn't even reference 13-305. It doesn't even make any reference to it at all. It doesn't even try to amend it or modify. It just basically creates a conflicting law. Now, what is that? That is when you can win a prize. So the difference is between social and sweepstakes is that in sweepstakes, you can win a prize.
Delegate Buckle.
Madam Chair, so this is obviously a little bit complicated. I think clearly what we have to do is ban companies that are offering pure online gaming not tied to regular legal consumer activity. So if you're coming in and saying, hey, I'm operating essentially an online casino where people are wagering on funny little games and you're putting money in and you win monetary prizes or quote unquote tokens, credits that you just turn in for money, and that's all you're doing, then you're an online game that's unregulated, and everybody from lottery on down wants to eliminate those actors to the greatest extent possible. But is there a way to do that? You're saying that you don't think the bill not only would do that, but the bill would affect commercial operations, people that are just offering consumer goods or services and use these sweepstakes formats to incentivize their promotions, essentially. Is that fair?
Right. Yes. So as to your first point, it's already prohibited, which is why I don't understand why Delegate Ebersol had to introduce this bill. It's already prohibited, the first thing. Offshore gambling is already illegal. It's a crime in Maryland. So we don't really need another bill to tell us that. But yes, it's true. There are, as to your second point, just like with the Starbucks and the Taylor Swift and the Marriott and everything else. In fact, when the chair's bill passes on iGaming, one of the most popular ways to market to new customers for Caesars, MGM, and all these other online casinos is by using sweepstakes, by using giveaway prizes. I mean, we all have heard Publishers Clearinghouse and the $1 million prize. Now, that doesn't use dual currency, but Starbucks does use dual currency, so Starbucks would become a crime, and anyone who supported Starbucks would be considered committing a crime under Delegate Ebersol's bill.
So dual currency is the thing. I mean, I believe very much that the intent of the bill is correct to eliminate bad actors in the field.
Right.
But is the term of art you're using dual currency, and we had to take a look at where you're not eliminating. I don't believe that anybody on the committee has the intent to eliminate Starbucks' ability to offer buy 3, get a 5th free, buy 3, get entered in a prize where you can win something. There's a way to do that, right?
Yeah,
so that we can
absolutely.
separate the wheat from the chaff within the bill.
Right, but it's really not, I know that the lobbyist who was up here before thought it's a joke, but it's really not a joke. The Starbucks Win for Life game will be prohibited under this bill, and I'm sure that's not the intention, but because of the way it's written, it only requires 3 elements: dual currency, you play it on the internet, and you can win a prize through an instant win casino-style game. Starbucks does all those things. And the reason why it's legal in Maryland is because under 13305G, it provides a no purchase necessary component. Now, with Starbucks, you have to write on a 3x5 index card. I'm sure you're all familiar. You have to mail it away, and that's why it's legal in Maryland. This bill would make this game, which is offered twice a year for a month, illegal.
Thank you.
I will note, I just went to Chumba Casino, and it says exciting online slots and casino-style games. And then they have slots, bingo, slingo, table games, scratch cards. So that is very, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. Blackjack. I mean, this sounds a lot like casino games. Play free slots and casino-style games at Chumba Casino. So I will just say that.
I mean, Madam Chair, if the committee wanted to do a study and revisit this in the next session, I think it would make a lot of sense to look at how does free-to-play slots and casino games on Chumba and other social promotional games work? And do you have a problem with that? When you read it like that, casino, poker, sure, those are casino games, which if offered, if that was real money gaming, then those would be illegal here unless your bill passes and they get a license. But because it's free to enter, it doesn't violate Maryland law.
And it does say, I just have to check off, I confirm that I'm 21 years or older. And I understand if I live in excluded territory, I am not eligible to play Chumba. So I just check those off. I'm not going to go ahead and sign up for an account, but I don't see any age type verification or anything other than me saying I'm 21.
If you proceeded through, I promise you, your age would be verified and your location would be subject to geolocation from a registered supplier in Maryland.
Okay. I don't want to sign up because I don't want to keep getting a bunch of
I
stuff
know
on my phone.
how you feel. I don't either.
Delegate Roberson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that. Wow. Quick questions. If iGaming becomes legal, will this bill be needed? Would it allow for you all to continue to operate as is?
Well, so again, who we all are. So this bill cobbles together online gaming operators, offshore operators, and sweepstakes operators. If the iGaming bill passes, the first 2 buckets, offshore operators and online operators, would still be illegal. Even, I mean, under the chair's bill, she's not legalizing.
Correct.
But for getting a license in Maryland. So if you don't get a license, strict liability, you're out.
Right.
Now, as for the 3rd bucket, online sweepstakes, which is also in this definition, those games are legal under 13305. So if you wanted to amend 13305, that would be the way to get to sweepstakes and promotions. This bill doesn't even mention Maryland 13305. It just ignores it and says promotions and sweepstakes are illegal, essentially, when played online.
Got you. And then the previous panel mentioned that games like Candy Crush, this does not apply to. Would you argue the opposite, that this does apply?
No, it doesn't apply to it. I was just trying to define what social games are versus sweepstakes games. Social games like Candy Crush don't require a payment, and they don't offer a prize, so they don't meet the 3 elements of gambling under Maryland law.
Right, so this doesn't apply to them?
No, it doesn't apply to them.
Correct, okay, just being clear. And then the other question, we were talking about just different ways. You mentioned Starbucks, for instance. Okay, so let's say, you know, McDonald's does Monopoly game, or Giant, the grocery store. If you go and purchase something and, you know, they do a thing where every $10 you get a coupon for that. This does not fall under that, am I correct?
No, this doesn't fall under that because it doesn't, those games don't utilize dual currency systems, but the McDonald's game does offer a very similar concept, right? If you go in, there's no purchase necessary. You can apply for the Monopoly game by submitting a 3x5 card to McDonald's headquarters. However, if you only get 1 entry per day at McDonald's, if you go in and keep buying hamburgers, they keep giving you another entry.
Right.
So that's all these games are, essentially. You can get a free-to-play game, and you can get a free entry, and you can win a prize, just like you can with the Monopoly game. However, if you decide to make a purchase, you're going to get potentially additional entrants.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how do you fix the bill so that like Starbucks can operate and the illegal casinos can't? What's the, how do you amend it?
Well, I mean, there are different options. You could require anyone who wants to run a promotion in Maryland to register and pay a fee. If you wanted to tell the lottery that from now on, anyone who wants to do an online sweepstakes has to pay, I don't know, $100K a year and register and make sure you're paying sales tax or complying with your digital goods tax. That would be one way to both raise revenue and get everyone to register. And anyone who's not registered, which would be all your offshore people, would be subject to the prohibitions in the bill. So that could be one way to amend it. Another way to amend it would be to exempt sweepstakes that otherwise comply with 13305. Since Delegate Ebersol didn't reference 13305, I assume he's not trying to modify it. So maybe to make it clearer that this is not intended to modify existing law, you could have an amendment that says, in addition to registering, paying $100K and being taxed, any promotion that's already legal under 13305 remains legal.
Thank you.
I mean, I think the bill should be struck, obviously, but you asked me a specific question. I don't want to not answer it.
I understand. Thank you.
Delegate Fair.
So you made an interesting comment. Thank you, Madam Chair, by the way. Thank you. You made an interesting comment, and in it you said, we all, and you did like air quotes with it. Who is we all in that?
Well, that was because the delegate had asked a question about you all. So I said, well, we're not all, because that's a combination of both operators, offshore illegal operators, which we don't represent. We only represent the members of our association, all of whom only are in the first bucket, which is just sweepstakes and promotions.
Gotcha. And who are those members? Just curious.
What are their names?
You represent, yeah, like some of the organizations you represent.
So we represent payment processors, we represent PaySafe, we represent Pay Near Me. They're all members. Anyone who processes online promotions and sweepstakes for the industry is a member. Okay. In addition to certain operators, and then identity verification, anyone who processes AMOEs. So when you submit that 3x5 card, someone has to collect all of those and actually process them. So those are the types of companies that are members.
Gotcha.
And they're not foreign companies, and they're also not offshore. Most of them are headquartered in Delaware.
Understood. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You said AMOE, what does that mean?
Oh, sorry, that's another way of saying no purchase necessary. It stands for alternative method of entry.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1140. Delegate Buckle, House Bill 1048, and you have Bruce Bariano, Marutha Prasad, Leslie Feliz, Elise Cohen, and Sarah Price.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can as many of them come up as can fit at one time? I think we might all be able to fit.
You can stand up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. This is Delegate Jason Buckle presenting House Bill 1048. House Bill 1048 is an effort
to attempt not to hurt anyone in the gaming industry. I believe that most of you who've served with me for many, many years in this committee knows that I'm generally very, very responsive and concerned about protecting and helping our gaming partners because they fund many, many significant activities in our state, including public education. And they provide local impact grants, meaning our casinos, and they have a big role to play and they need to be addressed accordingly. But there's another entity that fits within our gaming and racing framework who unfortunately, because of just the vagaries of the economy and the world and how wagering has gone, have been suffering for many years, frankly. And their continuing financial viability to our state is, I think, jeopardized if we don't do something to try to assist them and bring them into the 21st century as gaming, racing, and wagering entities. And that entity or set of entities are the off-track betting facilities. We have a number of them here in Maryland. Very few of them are in the major metropolitan areas. There is one in Timonium. Most of them are in suburban, farther suburban, exurban, and rural communities. And what the bill would do is allow predominantly those off-track betting facilities to bring in a different type of gaming machine, something that frankly I wasn't very familiar with until within the last 8-9 months. It's called historical horse racing machines. Historical horse racing machines can look like a VLT, like a standard slot machine that our committee would deal with all the time. They can look like it in terms of the skin or the gaming experience that's been provided. They can look differently. They can look like you're actually watching sort of a manipulated horse race. But the mechanics of them and the principles of them are based more on parimutuel betting, where unlike a standard slot machine or VLT, when I get up, I really don't have a way to leverage my bet. I can't go into the mechanics and press a button and say it's better for me to bet on such and such a proposition than another proposition. I just hit the button and there's a code inside that spins the little gamey things and I come up with a win or I get a spin. I only play the slot machines that I get a spin at the top because they're the only ones I can understand when I'll ever win money. And I like to do that. I'm not much of a gambler. I like to win. Once I lose for a little bit, I kick the machine, usually leave the casino and curse everyone who allowed casino gambling in Maryland. But I do understand that with the parimutuel, with these machines, some people got an opportunity to see them. They were set up for a little bit of a demonstration over in our office building a few days ago. It's very difficult with people's time. There's a unique feature where you can actually log on to them. It can be better explained by the experts. And you will see, because their metrics, their mathematics are based upon this history of actual horse races that were run at a variety of tracks over many, many, many years, and they're built into an algorithm. And you can actually see the fundamentals of the algorithm of, hey, I'm going to bet into this particular race profile, and this is how people bet on the race historically, and I have a leverage point from that of deciding which, you can call it horses, that's the way it looks at which propositions I'm going to bet. I'm going to say number 1, number 3, number 5. Those would be my top 3 things. And that resets the spin, the reel, the picture that is shown to you and determines your odds for winning. And you're all linked together in that betting, either through one group of machines at a facility, or you can link them together at multiple facilities through the miracle of technology. I don't want to bore you too much with the details of the game other than to suggest that while it has some inherent similarities to VLTs, it has some very fundamental differences as well in how they present and how they would be dealt with. But I do want to focus you on the potential of using this to help these off-track betting facilities. Predominantly, there's one in Frederick. Ms. Cohen is here that can describe that. In Washington County, they exist in a few other outlying areas. I also want to let you know that because of concerns from our VLT partners, our friends in the casino industry about potential cannibalization, we would intend, if the committee would move the bill forward, to offer some amendments that would narrow where the HHR machines could be placed to a 35-mile radius away from existing VLT machines. We don't want to create excessive cannibalization. You'll hear from others who will indicate that their data studies and market studies suggest there really won't be any cannibalization. I can tell you that if you put these machines into OTB parlors in places like Frederick County and Washington County, where the majority of that cannibalization would occur from, probably almost all of it, is from the Charlestown Racetrack and Casino in West Virginia. That is the closest place to a lot of these facilities where people would go if they were just day gamblers. These are not resorts. They're not places people go for multiple days typically to bet. The other potential committee amendment would be in response to some concerns about the taxation rate. The taxation rate in the bill is 15%. There is an amendment that would increase the taxation rate depending upon the yields, the revenue derived from the machines, from 20% all the way up to 40% to bring it more in line. Because the machines typically produce a little bit smaller of a yield to the operator than what VLTs do and can under our system, if you got much above that, you're probably eliminating the economic utility of using it. You'll hear from Ms. Cohen and potentially other OTB operators to suggest that they view this as a creative way to give them an opportunity to stay in business, to generate revenue for the state of Maryland, all of the revenue derived under the bill, which sort of puts it in a sports gaming context. Almost all of the revenue goes to the blueprint. This is a net positive bill as analyzed by DLS for the blueprint and other funding sources that I know members of the committee are very interested in making sure that we comply with. And we think that it's a reasonable compromise to help these businesses within these spaces without hurting the rest of our partners in the gaming and racing industry. In fact, by potentially trying to help them by maybe keeping some people in Maryland who may go to other states. And with that, I'd certainly leave it to the other members of the panel to describe some of the particulars of it and take any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm happy to start. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee, thank you for having me. As the owner of Longshots OTB and Sportsbook, I'm in favor of House Bill 1048. Retail OTBs are struggling to survive. With sales trending downwards for the last 4 years, Longshots' handle has dropped 33%. Once hopeful that retail sports betting would provide a much-needed sales boost, we have instead seen the entirety of sports betting go online. Consequently, rising operational costs and decreasing revenues have made brick-and-mortar OTBs in Maryland unsustainable. We want to survive and moreover thrive. Historic horse racing, or HHR, is that solution. Unlike other small businesses, gaming-based companies have to legislate to enact change. The OTB owners you see here are not major organizations who play on a national or even international level. We do not look to the larger map or political climate of the US to determine how, where, or when we will grow our businesses. Rather, we have to look to the Maryland Assembly before us. We are entrenched in our local communities. We truly understand the importance of economic impact as we live it. Jobs, both construction and permanent, infrastructure, flourishing restaurants and hotels, increased tourism. Those are just a handful of the benefits that we could provide our immediate neighbors and friends. HHR is a form of betting on horse races, an established OTB activity. The OTBs are not looking, nor would we even be able to compete with the casino. Instead, we simply want to offer an alternative method of entertainment by using parimutuel wagering. Arkansas, Kentucky, and now Virginia have all proven that HHR attracts a broader array of horse racing enthusiasts. Virginia demonstrates that even as HHR locations expand in number, the casino handles are increasing. They easily coexist. Are we going to argue over the fragility of the casinos? Or are we going to support minority and women-owned businesses that will cease to exist if we do not involve the current marketplace? Thank you, and I hope for a favorable report on House Bill 1048.
Good afternoon, Madams Chair and Vice Chair and honorable committee members. Sarah Price here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. We are supportive of this proposal to expand the opportunities that are available to Maryland's OTBs. These facilities are economic hubs for their communities, providing entertainment attractions that can drive patronage for the surrounding hospitality and retail industries. HB 1048 would level the playing field between our OTBs and neighboring jurisdictions, increasing revenue and keeping Maryland gaming dollars in the state. We do support the proposed amendments that have already been discussed, and we would ask for a favorable vote on this expanded revenue source for Maryland. Thank you.
Madam Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Wilkins and members of House and Means Committee, my name is Maruti Prasad. I'm the managing partner of Riverboat on the Potomac, a 100% minority business enterprise that has proudly served Maryland over 30 years. I'm here today to strongly support House Bill 1048, which would allow the facilities like ours to offer historical horse racing machines. Despite Maryland's expansion in sports wagering, retail sportsbooks have not met revenue expectations. Our facility has experienced a decline in revenue and we need additional options to remain competitive. Many of our customers are already asking for horse racing terminals. Unfortunately, we have to turn them down because of the location where we are. We are literally in Virginia on the Potomac River, and in Virginia it is legal for historical horse racing scenes, and that's the reason they continuously come down and ask us like, hey, why don't you have those machines? Historical horse racing machines would provide much needed boost, increasing foot traffic, expanding our customer base, and generate new revenue, not for just Marylanders, but from out-of-state visitors. This means additional tax revenue for Maryland without burdening our residents. Riverboat on the Potomac has proven track record of responsible gaming and operations. HB 1048 would not only support our business, but also create jobs and strengthen Maryland's gaming industry. I urge you to issue favorable report on House Bill 1048. Thank you, and I can answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and honorable members of this committee. My name is Leslie Felice from Greenwell Consulting Group, but I'm here today on behalf of Jennifer DiPietro, founder of Chesapeake Gaming, located in Boonesboro. We're here to express our strong support for House Bill 1048. For a long time, the off-track betting facility has served a dedicated customer base, but we're seeing that as the base ages, less and less customers are coming in, and with COVID-19, it has only gotten worse. So many of the long-time customers have not returned. So with the decrease in foot traffic, we're also seeing a sharp decline in revenues. Also, with the introduction of retail sports books, we thought that there was going to be a sustainable profit from that, but the reality is that it's falling short of expectations, and with online sports books, it's made it very difficult for Chesapeake Gaming to even get a retail partner. So for these reasons, we are looking for possible solutions, and House Bill 1048 offers that. It's going to give an opportunity to bring new revenue, attract those customers back, and hopefully help a industry that is at risk of disappearing. So for these reasons, I respectfully urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to questions, can someone swap out with Mr. Mariano? And then we'll do questions.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the House Ways and Means Committee. Bruce Mariano, I'm here on behalf of Long Shots in very strong support of this legislation. Some of you previously have been up to Long Shots. I know the committee, I think a year or so ago, had a visit up there. And you saw the amount of money and effort that my client has put. They have a lot of skin in this game. This bill is also tremendous economic development for Frederick, one of the largest growing counties in our state. And we all know our financial situation, and we need to find creative, legitimate, strong, reliable ways of raising money and bringing more money into the state of Maryland. If we don't do stuff like this bill, that possibly iGaming and other sports activities, Maryland's going to become an island. If you look what's going on in Pennsylvania, what's going on in West Virginia, what's going on in Virginia, Maryland will just be an island. It'll be a desert of just not expanding what the public wants, and that is additional gaming opportunities to recreate and to stay in Maryland and spend their taxpayer money in Maryland. Respectfully, the opposition of the casinos, I really look at crocodile tears. I mean, you all are the decision makers. You all have to decide what is best for the state of Maryland. And I think with the amendments, it's very, very balanced. There's no other gaming facility, no other casino that's woman-owned or someone of color. We have to expand the people that are involved in this and what are participating. Furthermore, the machines are really no different. The machines are not slot machines. I know the opposition's going to say that, but they're not. They're no different in the sense, go down to Chesapeake Beach, go to Bingo World in Anne Arundel County. They're not slot machines. The way the machines function determine if they're slot machines. These are not games of chance at all. I would urge a favorable report. Very important for you to expand and develop gaming and give these other folks a fine chance to grow and develop. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions? We'll start with the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. Ms. Cohen, we did have a wonderful visit to Longshot, so thank you for hosting us at your beautiful facility. And I appreciate a solution being provided because we know that some of our OTBs have been struggling to make sure that they achieve success. So we do appreciate the solution being brought. For the sponsor, I did have two questions to clarify. In terms of the historical horse racing and this authorizing it, do these types of machines, are these currently used and exist already in Maryland legally?
I don't know if they would exist illegally. They don't exist legally. They exist in many other states. The demonstrations that I saw of them, really, the differentiation was, as I indicated, before you hit the button and just get your randomized result, you have the ability to go in and see an odds calculation that's based off the historical horse racing data and enter in your picks of, like, I like the 7-to-1 medium shot, I like the 20-to-1 long shot, I like the way this bet. And then it, as I've said many times in this committee, I went to law school to avoid math, so don't ask me how it works. But somehow it works that those calculations then adjust the mathematical algorithm for the result, regardless of whether it's, 6 frogs coming across a screen or a physical representation of an actual digitized horse race. Regardless of how that is, the algorithm is changed or has the potential to be changed based upon your betting. So we don't have, to my knowledge, those types of machines legally here in Maryland today, but they exist in quite a few other states.
So this would be something that would be new. Are there any concerns, or have we looked into this being a potential expansion of gaming?
So I think that's a challenging issue. I'm always one to just give you a straight answer. Ultimately, I don't think that's as black and white. We believe that it's very sustainable to suggest that it's not an expansion of gaming based upon some prior court decisions that involved our bingo partners. As you well know, there are big, I call them quote unquote bingo parlors. That's what they call them. That they were found to be different because of the nature of the game, not the way it looks to you or I walking up to it, but the nature of the game. And the facilities themselves, the machines themselves would also be limited only at these types of facilities that already have commercial gaming and are licensed under our existing system. Much like Madam Chair's bill with iGaming, I asked the same type of question, and I think there may still be an opinion waiting out there in the wings of if you limited it only to places that are already licensed facilities and said this is just a different way for them to offer the same a gaming product, perhaps that would not be legally defined as an expansion of commercial gaming subject to referendum.
Right, but there's a possibility that this could be an expansion. Just the last question that I have, just on the taxes, the taxing on it, I wanted to get your thoughts, since sports wagering is at the 15% right now. I'm assuming that under this bill, it would be at the 15%. But since this is a bit similar to the VLTs, what are your thoughts and recommendations? We know that the VLTs are way more than that.
So the way the way the bill was originally drafted, it was tied to the sports gaming percentage, which may change under the governor's proposal. We certainly haven't dealt with it yet in the BRFA through our committee process, but the governor's proposing raising that. What the proposed amendments that I indicated at the beginning, they were not circulated until we see, if the committee's going to move forward with the bill, we certainly would offer those. The taxation rate for the state would vary. It would be a sliding scale from 20% up to 40% based upon the net revenues that the facilities derive. So that you could get, hopefully, if everything is successful and you work, the rate would work out to 40%, which puts it in line, for example, with the casino in my community, the Rocky Gap Casino. Their percentage that they hold on VLTs is around 40%. Some casinos, as we all know, because of historic factors, the casino percentages are not uniform on VLTs as they are on table games. So the purposes of those amendments are to bring the percentage of taxation withheld to the state more in line with the VLT operators. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Fair.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill forward. Ms. Cohen, we've heard a lot of discussion around this, but I want to cut right into really what I think is the crux of kind of the challenge that we're addressing here as a committee, and that's the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency letter of information. And Mr. Bariano kind of alluded to this in his testimony, but I'm wondering if you can help the committee understand better that about historical horse racing and games of chance versus games of skill, and what kind of, why is that such an important distinction here?
Thank you for bringing that up, Delegate Fair. So in 2001, there's actually a court case. It was Chesapeake Amusements against Riddle. And the ruling was, which was referenced to our bingo halls, is that the exterior, or what they refer to as the entertainment screen, is irrelevant. It's the interior of the machine that counts. And what I mean by that is it a game of skill versus a game of chance? And HHR is very much a game of skill. And the reason it's a game of skill is because it's something that you can go and actually self-handicap. So there's a display above the typical sort of VLT screen that shows a number of horse races. Those horse races and what you see above you determines the outcome of the game itself. You can also go into the machine and see various stats, jockey stats, odds, and then play the game based upon the odds that are presented to you. As a consequence, you're using your own knowledge to determine how you play that game. I hope that answers your question, Delegate Fair.
It does, and I'm sorry, you cited a case. Do you know where that case was heard at?
I do not, but it seems.
It was a case that originated, I think, in Culver County, but the point is the case was the Court of Appeals, now called the Supreme Court.
The Maryland Supreme Court? Okay.
It was very, very clear. The bells and whistles are irrelevant. The music, the functionality of the machine determines whether it is or is not a slot machine, and they determined that that is the governing factor, and as my client indicated, this is not a game of chance, it's a game of skill.
So my final question, and again, I'll go to you, Ms. Cohen, or sir, as the representative of Riverboat. There's a suggestion in the Gaming Commission's agency's letter that the cannibalization of VLTs because of this existing, I think the good delegate who sponsored the bill brought this up, but location-wise, geographically, you're not losing business to the casinos in Maryland. Is that a fair statement to make, Ms. Cohen?
That is correct. I mean, like we are way far away from, the closest one would be MGM, which would be probably around 50 miles, I would say. Yeah. And we're all the way moved into Virginia. So if somebody from Maryland has to come in, they have to cross the bridge and would probably run 20 miles into the Maryland to even come to our location. So I don't see anywhere it's affecting any of the Maryland casinos. If it affects the 90% of the revenue which Riverboat generates is from Virginia.
And I don't know where Frederick's located, but would you say that Hollywood Casino is pretty close to Frederick, that people would travel there instead of going to a casino here in Maryland?
All of Longshot's customers arguably go to Charlestown, West Virginia, if they want a full, blown casino experience. And, we now know that Tyson's Corner is also legislating, Virginia's legislating to have a casino in Tyson's Corner, which would be the most direct path for anyone from Frederick to go down 270 to Virginia. So all of those, and, you'll hear from a number of experts after us to the precise dollars that are leaving the state year over year, which are significant, and they will only increase with that casino being in such proximity.
So this effort would actually help to bring new dollars into the state that would not be here otherwise. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So the Virginia casino, that legislation did fail, but it probably will pass next session for them. Delegate Hornberger.
I had two questions. One, I'm very familiar with what happened in Kentucky and when they introduced these, it kind of like saved horse racing, and it's actually their primary source of income down there now. I'm not as familiar, I just heard Virginia mentioned. If maybe the sponsor of the bill could allude to what's going on in Virginia.
So there are, I believe, and there's some slides probably, if you print them off or have the access of them, from the GGHM consultants who monitor and work in this space nationwide. There are, it looks like, 7 HHR facilities in the state of Virginia. Virginia, I think, currently has 3 operating casinos, and as Madam Chair indicated, there are legislative efforts to expand by at least 2, which means that they'll be roughly on par with us in terms of casino facilities probably in the next few years. And they have 7 of these throughout the state. The closest one to us is a facility in Dumfries, Virginia, which is in Prince William, roughly an hour short of or south of DC. And all indications suggest that it thrives. Even though it competes with different casinos, both within Virginia and also MGM and other places in that market, that it has not created any type of cannibalization there. So the state of Virginia is profiting quite significantly, I believe, from the operation of these HHR facilities, which were independent from OTBs. We're only trying to bring them in to help people who've already been in our gaming ecosystem and are simply just falling behind because horse racing is not popular the way it was 20 years ago. Same reason we helped Pimlico and the Preakness. They could not sustain themselves in the 21st century. They needed to get some assistance from the state. That's what we're looking at for these, 4, 5, 6 entities in sort of the outskirts of the metropolitan areas and in rural areas to give them a chance to succeed.
Yeah, and then
And Delegate Buckle, if I may add, in '23, there were roughly 2,500 HHR machines in Virginia. In '24, they went up to almost 4,500 HHR machines, and the casinos also saw during that period of time a 33% increase in their handle. So I think that's very powerful to understand that these two basically gaming centers can exist and grow together.
yeah, so just to put a finer point on that, if you could, because since you're one of the owners, what kind of money are we talking, potential revenue for the state?
Well, again, you'll hear from some of our gaming experts behind us, but if we look at 500 machines per the 5 OTB locations that we're pinpointing in the original bill, at a 40% tax rate, that's $60 million in statewide tax revenue every year. Now, there's been amendments posed, and things can change, but that would be sort of the simple math.
And that goes directly to the Blueprint Fund, right?
That's the way that it's currently written in sports gaming. I think if you took the DLS analysis, they would have it when it maxes out in 2030, when everybody's online, so to speak, at least 25 million. And the analysis, if you went with sort of a full-blown at a 40% rate, it could get you up to $60 million.
Thank you.
Delegate Roberson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To my good friend, the sponsor of the bill, I always want to say that. But question for you, have you seen the amendment from the Maryland Farm Bureau asking that a portion of the tax revenue goes to the horse racing special fund? And if so, are you in favor of that amendment?
I saw a letter. I mean, I haven't seen the actual amendment or if they proposed, specific language. I certainly know that our horsemen and that our Farm Bureau want to, as we historically have done, carve out a little tranche of the money from these types of activities to devote to the purse dedication account or the racetrack facilities account, something that helps. As I said with the casinos, I think the casino folks will testify and they know this. No one wants to see our casinos succeed more than what I do. Nobody thinks that sometimes we come back to the trough and hit them harder than what they need to be hit than what I do. It's tough business. And I'm the same way with horsemen. I want to see them succeed. I think we've done a lot with Pimlico, with Preakness, with PDA and RIFR over the years. If the committee believes that that's the right way to carve out a little bit of this money and direct to them, we certainly have no problems, but we also understand that in our financial situation today, there is a prioritization of money, and the way that the bill is drafted would be, the monies would go toward the blueprint. If the committee decides they'd like to see it go into the general fund for deficit relief, if the committee thinks that it makes sense to carve off a little piece of that towards the horseman objectives.
Yeah, it calls for 25%, just
Yeah,
so.
well, 25% might be a little high, but as far as I'm concerned, if the activity is there and we can all come to consensus of where we would best use the monies, we're fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to, that's inarguably one of the biggest supporters of our casinos is Delegate Buckle. I mean, hands down across the board. And what they have brought to different parts of the state and different communities has been really important for the infrastructure of the state and as far as the revenues being returned to the state. So you do have letters of support from Frederick and from Washington County. Can you talk a little bit, because also completely right, everything I hear in my county, in Frederick, is that if anyone's going to the casinos, they are going to Charlestown. And they also go to Charlestown for the entertainment piece of it as well, that they are able to build around that. And I think same thing with some of the casinos, they're actually going more toward more family environment, more all-inclusive, all aspects. So can you talk a little bit about what you would bring to an area like Frederick, and particularly where you're located, and then also maybe speak a little bit about Washington County, or if you guys wanted to chime in, what will you bring with that added resource and that added revenue to the area?
Thank you, Delegate Miller. That's an excellent point. Long Shots is located right on I-270 at a regional mall, the Francis Scott Key Mall. It's a 14-acre parcel, and we've had plans to redevelop this property for years, and this would be an excellent catalyst, a way to do that. It's, regional malls without a big demand generator are struggling. And, Frederick is an island. We're an hour away from the nearest casino in Maryland. If you look at what Maryland's Live has done for, Anne Arundel County, what MGM has done for the National Harbor. Now, I'm not saying we could anywhere near that sort of, magnitude, but for our local rural community, we would be able to build a new hotel. We would be able to, install new restaurants. I know for a fact, based upon our study, 100 jobs per 500 machines, just the machines alone. So let's think about the restaurant employees. Let's think about the hotel employees. Let's think about the construction jobs that we can create in communities that don't have these types of large demand generators. It's entertainment. It's keeping people, happy in their places, and where they want to live. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going to call the unfavorables, and then there's a panel of folks that are just information only. So unfavorables, Sean Malone, Marta Harding, and Mr. Malone, you're here for, Caitlin signed up as well, but it's just you.
Get the prettier face.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Marta Harding here on behalf of MGM National Harbor Casino, respectfully in opposition to the bill. To us, whatever the technical differences are between the way these machines operate, the way the HHR machines operate and the VLT machines operate, is really not the issue. The issue is the player experience, and the player experience is the same. It is the experience of playing a slot machine. We agree with the fiscal note. The fiscal note says that these machines mimic the experience of a slot machine, and as a result, we also agree with the fiscal note that it will cannibalize casino revenues. You can easily see for yourself how this would happen. I encourage you, Delegate Buckle, you mentioned the Rose's facility in Virginia. If you get a chance, please go to their website. It's therosegamingresort.com. And it is a brand new facility 30 miles from MGM with 1,600 machines. It's got the hotel, it's got all the things associated with it. It is in the short time it's been around, I think it's less than 6 months, it has become a very real competitive force in the market area where MGM primarily competes. And while we can't control what Virginia does, we can control what Maryland does. And to create another competitive force against Maryland's casinos, we don't think is the right approach. The fiscal note says that there will be a cannibalization of revenues, and as we read the fiscal note, it is a net negative to the state, certainly at a 15% tax rate, where it's, as I calculate, or as I read the fiscal note, it's a net negative of nearly $400,000 to the state. If you double that, it's still a net negative. If you triple that, which is more than I think the amendment we're talking about, you would still have a net negative to the state. At the end of the day, we've got a very successful partnership between the casinos and the state, and we just don't think that any threat to that model that has brought so much to the Education Trust Fund is warranted at this time. And for those reasons, we would ask for an unfavorable report.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, on behalf of Hollywood Casino in Perryville, my name is Sean Malone. Sitting in this room, I feel really old in the sense that I'm one of the few that was here in 2008 when this original bill went through. In 2010, the Attorney General weighed in on this and indicated that this type of expansion of gaming would require a referendum. And I think that's referenced in the letter from the Gaming Commission. But we have created, through that statute and subsequent expansion with the hard work of this committee, a really very successful public-private partnership. In the case of my casino, or the casino I represent in Hollywood, Hollywood Casino, we're the minority partner in our own property. We don't pay 15% of our VLT revenue. We pay 58% of our VLT revenue, 58%. So the idea to come in and ask for 15% is for, as you know, my colleague indicated, for an experience that is very similar. Just isn't realistic. I think ultimately what we have seen with gaming in this state, originally this was just, we were just gonna have VLTs, we're gonna have slot houses. We expanded to table games, we expanded to sports gaming, we expanded to sports gaming at off-track betting locations. So this is only the first step here, but as Ms. Harding indicated, for every $1 million that leaves a casino and goes here, the state's losing about $350,000 because of the partnership. So it's our partnership, and I think the state has an obligation to continue to work with us. We've made an investment. It's also important to note, through the work of casinos, we make about $94 million for the horse racing industry a year right now, $94 million. And part of that was a deal that was originally cut. We wouldn't put these types of things at the racetracks, but they would get their cut every year. But that we ask for in favor report.
Okay, Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have played Candy Crush before, and so do you think that, so I can pull up Candy Crush right now on my phone and go ahead and start playing it. It's got lots of lights and it's got all kinds of crazy graphics, and you spin things, you move things, you shift things, you do all kinds of stuff to win a reward that's not even financial, but you sure as heck put a lot of money into it because you gotta, pay off the ads, you gotta pay in to get little coins, and you got all these other little trinkets that you can buy. So by your logic, if it looks and feels like VLT, it is VLT. Is Candy Crush a VLT then? I'm putting money into a system. It's very graphically oriented. I'm moving things around in order to produce a result that shows that I win. It's the same exact feeling as a slot machine or a VLT. So would you argue that Candy Crush is the same as a VLT?
That's not what I'm arguing.
Okay.
I would say, Delegate Fair, take a look at the roses.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me. I don't know how you can look at those machines and say that that experience is not the experience of playing a slot machine.
So then my question would be, if the Maryland Supreme Court can find the difference, do you disagree with the Maryland Supreme Court's interpretation?
That's
that
not-
games of skill and games of chance are actually different,
That's
inherently
for
different?
a legal distinction. I'm sorry, Delegate Fair.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
That's a legal distinction I'm not here to argue about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what these things are, but I know how they operate, and MGM is living the experience of how those operate in Virginia, and it's creating a real competitive force. So they know from experience that these do compete with VLT revenues, and that's, whether Candy Crush and set up as a machine would be the same thing, I have no idea.
And you mentioned that the one in Virginia is 30 miles away from MGM, and that's causing some heartburn. We heard from our riverboat friend who is just trying to keep a small OTB alive and well and healthy, that they're more than 50 miles away. The Frederick facilities, there's no options at all for Frederick residents to be able to go to play casinos without driving an hour or more away. Are you that concerned that these small, tiny, little independently owned OTBs, 4 of them throughout the state, I think is the number, plus, and I don't know what else the bill contemplates beyond that, but that are in nowhere geographically close to your locations are really going to cannibalize seriously the business in your industry?
I could say that we are a destination. We draw customers from all over the state. Now, would somebody drive an hour to play slots for an hour or two? Most likely not. But would they come to spend a day or a weekend or overnight? And it happens all the time. Delegate Fair, what I would say is the reason Maryland's gaming program has been so successful is it is built on a model of a limited market with an extremely high tax rate. And the only way that tax rate works is to have a market that is that limited. So number one, the state makes a lot of money, but in addition, the casinos have the revenues that they need to reinvest and invest in their facilities, reinvest, do all the things they need to do to remain competitive in an increasingly competitive market, in particular for MGM with regard to Virginia. Sure. And that's the reason we've been successful. We think this bill just upsets that very careful balance that the state has always maintained.
And I think I agree with you 100%. We're always looking for a balance here, and that's what I think everybody is fighting for. But I really appreciate you bringing your testimony forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Delegate Robert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was really interested in the comment that you made, Mr. Malone, about being the minority in this situation and how you're taxed at 58%. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
The minority owner in that our VLT tax rate is 58% at Hollywood Casino. I mean, I hate to say that, it makes me the worst gaming lobbyist in the state. Everybody else is significantly less, but we're at 58%, so that means every dollar that comes in, 58 cents goes to the state. We retain 42, and that goes to our overhead and the like. So ultimately, and that's the bulk. I mean, VLTs are the backbone of the casino industry. That's where casinos stay alive. It's not from table games. It's not from sportsbook. So as you start to erode this, then I think that's where casinos start to get concerned. But we're nowhere at close to 15%. We're 4 times the proposed rate. Although I heard the delegates say they were looking at an increased rate, so I don't want to.
So I'm sorry, if this bill passed, what happens to your 58%?
We stay at 58%.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if this would go to a referendum and gets approved by voters, then you'd be okay with it then?
I mean, the results of elections I disagree with all the time, so, but probably not.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
We have some folks signed up for informational purposes. John Requintz, I totally did not say that right. Steve May virtually and Jordan Briggs virtually. So you can go ahead and begin as we check to see if they're with us.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is John Renkowitz. I am one of 4 partners at GGHM, a private advisory and consulting firm that focuses exclusively on the gaming industry. Thank you for having me today. My firm has been engaged by Long Shots in connection with the potential implementation of historical horse racing machines at 5 OTB locations in Maryland. Our work was performed independent of the OTB operators, and our conclusions and opinions are based on our own analyses, models, and professional judgment. Our baseline analysis assumes each OTB location would be permitted to operate up to 500 units for a total of 2,500 units statewide. This scenario would yield net gaming revenues of $151 million, and approximately $96 million of this represents incremental revenues which can be broken down as follows. $28 million from the recapture of Maryland residents currently patronizing out-of-state casinos, $34 million from out-of-state gamers, and $35 million from the creation of new gaming demand in Maryland. We estimate these HHRs could generate annual taxes of up to $60 million and create over 500 plus new direct jobs. Currently, Virginia is the only state where HHR facilities and casinos coexist. HHR facilities came online in 2019, and the first casino opened in 2022. Today, the market consists of approximately 9,000 HHR and slot machines, generating approximately $1 billion in annual revenues there. In 2024, the 3 existing Virginia casinos have each surpassed their original revenue projections. They've done this in the face of more HHR facilities and machines than originally contemplated, and 2 of those casinos have done so on a temporary basis, meaning temporary facilities. In conclusion, the proposed implementation of HHR at Maryland OGBs will grow the overall gaming market and generate incremental taxes and jobs. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Jordan Briggs, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Jordan Briggs. I'm an attorney at IFRA Law. As disclosed in our written testimony, IFRA represents several online and traditional gaming companies around the world. We also represent Longshots LLC and have provided legal advice to Longshots during the development of this bill. As shared in our written testimony, I'm here to the best of my ability, provide context on the legality of amending Maryland's sports wagering laws to include HHR. First, to summarize our written testimony, Maryland's sports wagering law has a unique definition of sporting event that allows horse races to be considered a sporting event. Because HHR runs on historical race data, HHR is similar to the horse races Maryland voters approved in the 2020 referendum. Next, I'd like to provide some information based on the points I've heard today. The Maryland parimutuel statute is written in a way that appears to give the Racing Commission authority over parimutuel bets placed on live races. Specifically, the statute says the commission may authorize a licensee to hold racing with parimutuel betting. Additionally, sports wagering is defined as the business of accepting wagers on any sporting event by any system or method of wagering. Together, these statutes indicate that parimutuel betting is not wholly under the Racing Commission's purview. Lastly, a 2010 Maryland Attorney General opinion was raised in written testimony. I just want to note that while attorney generals are experienced lawyers who play an important role in our government, they do not determine the law. That is the job of the courts. Additionally, the 2010 opinion was prior to the 2020 referendum and the passing of the sports wagering law. And finally, the opinion supports its conclusion with cases and attorney general opinions from Wyoming and Kentucky. Both of these states have since allowed HHR. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability.
Okay, Steve May for 2 minutes, please.
Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee, my name is Steve May. I'm a Senior Executive of Government Affairs for Gaming Laboratories International. GLI is an independent testing lab in the gaming industry. We conduct compliance testing on virtually all electronic gaming devices in the regulated gaming industry, literally around the world. Since 2010, I've been a subject matter expert on parimutuel wagering and historical horse racing, and I'm here solely at the request of Delegate Buckle through our government relations and outreach work that GLI does for the gaming industry. I'm not being paid by anybody for this testimony. I'm not advocating for or lobbying against the bill either way. And I'm also not suggesting any kind of regulatory structure for HHR if this were to pass. But we've had a long and productive history with the Maryland Lottery. As mentioned by people both for and against the bill today, HHR terminals are fundamentally different than existing gaming machines in Maryland. The first major difference is that HHR only offers parimutuel wagering on previously conducted horse races. Since it's parimutuel wagerings, patrons are actually placing wagers for and against each other, and the operator's taking a predetermined amount from those wagers. This is also the case with live and simulcast wagering that's currently being conducted in Maryland. So the payouts are not actually fixed, but they vary depending on the wins and losses of the other players that are playing into those pools. The second major difference is the outcome determination of HHR from other gaming devices. Slot machines and VLTs they use a random number generator to determine that outcome, and that's the sole outcome determinant on those. HHR does use the terminals. They use those previously conducted horse races, and there actually is that handicapping component that allows a player to impact the wager, since that's generally considered a game of skill on that. But there's none of that in a VLT or a slot machine. There's no skill aspect to that. There's no outcome. There's no way the player can influence that outcome on that. So again, I'm here to answer any kind of questions either today or either after this hearing as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1048. Our final bill, House Bill 1475, Delegate Feldmark, and you have Ruby Daniels virtually, Christina Push, and Ellie Colmers on your panel. And then there are more folks signed up to testify.
All right. Do you want to Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, committee members. It is a bittersweet moment. This is my last bill for this committee this session. But for the record, I am Delegate Jessica Feldmark, here to present House Bill 1475. We actually had a little bit of a preview of this bill in some Q&A discussion last week. So this is a bill dealing with mixed delivery pre-K and really sort of taking a step back. As you all know, the mixed delivery model depends on our private childcare providers participating in the public pre-K expansion grants. And it is the only way we are going to be able to have enough capacity to really provide pre-K to all the students that we need to in Maryland, and make sure that every student is coming to kindergarten ready to learn. So what this bill does is says, we need to look at this model and look at the pre-K expansion grants program and making sure it works for private providers so that this model will be viable, so that it will be desirable and feasible for private providers to participate and take on public pre-K expansion. And it does that by using an existing body. The Maryland State Department of Education Office of Child Care has an advisory council. So it's using that existing body to really take some time to study a number of issues that we've identified in the bill. And I won't read through the whole list, but it's all sorts of disparities between our public pre-K our pre-K classes in public schools versus what our private providers have to do to participate in the public pre-K expansion. And that is just one example, looking at how rest time during the day is counted, right? In our public schools, there's the school day. These are pre-K students. It's perfectly appropriate. They need a rest time in the middle of the day. That's part of the school day. For our private providers, the regulations say, well, rest time isn't instruction, so it doesn't count. So private providers actually have to provide a longer school day to accommodate the regulations. Looking at some of these issues, the reimbursement process, how long providers have to wait to be reimbursed. These are small businesses that it really is a strain on them to use this reimbursement model. Our public schools are forward funded. Is there a way we can look at that? Looking at the timing of the grant process, how it relates to the timing of when these providers are enrolling students for the coming year. Looking at just the administrative burden, looking at language access, all sorts of issues. So we want this body, the OCC Advisory Council, to take time, talk to providers, get a real understanding of these issues, and make recommendations. And give MSDE time to digest and implement those recommendations. And let's see how that implementation goes. And then a final report with additional recommendations for any changes if needed, including any statutory changes that may be needed. A lot of the issues they're going to be looking at are things that we do not necessarily need to address in legislation. They're things that could be handled through MSDE regulations and policy. But we really need this comprehensive look at how we make the mixed delivery system work. So I respectfully ask for your favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Happy to hear from my panel.
Sure. Ellie Colmers on behalf of the Maryland State Child Care Association and SEIU Local 500. I promise this is the last time you'll hear from me about childcare this year, at least, until crossover. We strongly support HB 1475. It's a critical step in ensuring the success of the blueprint for Maryland's future and the mixed delivery system. The mixed delivery model was adopted as an acknowledgement that public schools alone would not be able to serve the number of students, children, as the state moves towards universal pre-K. Unfortunately, as you've heard many times over the years, there are many barriers to private providers successfully taking part in that, and you'll hear more specifics on those issues from my fellow panelists. Every year you hear a number of bills trying to solve these problems, but it seems like for every success, every step forward, we have to take 2 steps back. This bill presents a comprehensive approach to address the systemic challenges that are preventing the success of mixed delivery. Since we know money is tight this year, HB 1475 will utilize an already standing group of a wide variety of stakeholders, the Office of Child Care Advisory Council, and task them with coming up with real viable solutions. This is a way to look at the problem holistically and not in a piecemeal way. So even though it may take longer for the council to come up with these recommendations and for MSDE to implement them, and then for the council to review those implementations, I think that being able to take a step back and look at the problem from all different angles will ensure that we can establish a strong foundation on which to build our mixed delivery system. It also includes the roadmap that I mentioned and defined timeline so that there's accountability for the implementation of the recommendations, which I think is absolutely essential. This is vital to ensuring that Maryland's mixed delivery system for pre-K education works for all children, family, and private providers, and we strongly recommend a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the sponsor for her leadership and to the committee for the opportunity to testify in strong support of House Bill 1475, the Mixed Delivery Viability Act. I'm Chris Push, Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association, co-chair of the Office of Child Care Advisory Council, and a state ECAC member. The definition of viability is to work successfully. House Bill 1475 is a critical bill to ensure we understand the inequities and challenges in the implementation of the Blueprint Pillar 1 and identify viable solutions for success. Child care is necessary for the economy. However, I cannot stress enough the business model is not sustainable without 3 and 4-year-olds, and there will be unintended consequences without better analysis and collaboration. None of the 24 school districts came close in the past 2 years to the Blueprint's mixed delivery requirement of at least 30% of pre-K students attending in private programs. This year, the state lowered it to 10%, which only 4 counties achieved last year. However, there are enough private programs, over 6,600, with a capacity of for 206,000 children, and over 500 programs accredited, and over 1,000 or 35% meeting Excel's requirements for the Blueprint, but not participating. The AIB has some responsibility, and in their December 23 report stated, the steps to address barriers for the private providers to pre-K participation include establishing and regularly convening an early childhood work group jointly with MSDE to discuss challenges and identify solutions to overcome the challenges to implement the Blueprint. The report goes on to identify timelines, recommendations for the partnership with MSDE, MFN, LEAs, EC stakeholders, state legislature, institution of higher ed. All of these parties are represented on the Office of Child Care Advisory Council outlined in this bill. We know you cannot achieve mixed delivery without private providers. Parents don't work 6.5 hours a day. We have a critical workforce shortage and a 15% decline in childcare, making viability even more challenging. Therefore, we must act through a catalyst such as HB 1475 to determine ways to improve the mixed delivery system so families have a choice and more women can participate in the labor workforce. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 1475. My name is Erin Adelsberger. I'm the Director of Education for CAC of Howard County, the county's designated nonprofit anti-poverty organization. Since 1979, we've been a cornerstone in the county's early childhood landscape, operating 5 locations and the ability to serve up to 400 children and counting. Since then, we have been the sole Head Start grantee and a participant in the mixed delivery system. Head Start is an income-based, federally funded program primarily serving families 100% and below federal poverty. In 2016, we became a pre-K expansion grantee as the forerunner of the blueprint for Maryland's Pillar 1. This allowed us to expand to serving families 300% and below federal poverty. Today, we continue to be a strong partner of the school system and the largest blueprint private provider in Howard County. Yet, a mixed delivery system cannot be achieved only with providers like us. There must be providers of all settings to support the community needs and parent choice in the system. While Pillar 1 ideally improves access through a mixed delivery system of private and public providers, the implementation itself misses the mark and doesn't account for the significant operational and financial implications private providers face when participating. These challenges vary in impact based on provider, and many of them cannot sustain them or overcome them. Some of these issues that you've heard noted before are discrepancies in codes and regulations, issues with things like rest time, substitute providers, day-to-day oversight, and monitoring. It also includes things like inefficiencies and delays in payment, changing of guidelines after grant agreements have been executed, and the process through which quality rating excels are changed. This will require, as you've heard, the Office of Child Care Advisory Council to conduct analysis, and we strongly support House Bill 1475.
Okay, Ruby Daniels, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruby Daniels, President of the Maryland State Family Child Care Association, a family child care provider, and an independent pre-K expansion grantee. I'm here today to express strong support for House Bill 1475, the Mixed Delivery Model Viability Act. Maryland has made great strides in expanding pre-kindergarten access through the blueprint of Maryland's future. But ensuring an equitable and effective system requires a deeper understanding of the different providers in the mixed delivery model, especially family child care. Family child care providers offer a unique and essential early learning environment, small class sizes, continuity of care, and a culturally responsive programming. Yet the policies and the funding mechanism that supports publicly funded pre-kindergarten often do not account for the complexity of operating a small home-based program. For example, delayed reimbursement, inconsistent regulation, and unnecessary administrative burdens create barriers for family child care providers who want to participate. If we are truly committed to offering families high-quality pre-K option, we must address these challenges and ensure all providers have a fair opportunity to be part of the system. House Bill 1475 ensures that stakeholder voices, especially those in family child care, are heard. By conducting a comprehensive analysis of the mixed delivery model, we can identify and correct inequities, streamline processes, and create a system that works for all providers, centers, and public school. I urge you to support this bill and help build a more inclusive, sustainable, and effective early childhood education system for Maryland's children. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is Katie Slavo-Thronson here? No? Okay, she was also favorable. There are some other favorables virtually, but are there any questions for these folks, committee? Okay,
Madam Chair, may I just add one more comment, please? You do have some favorable with amendment testimony, and I think you'll be hearing from them later. I just wanted to share for the record that I do consider
the requested amendment to include looking at serving children with disabilities a friendly amendment.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right, thank you. That was a great segue. Ms. London, if you could come forward. And it's my understanding Liz Zogby had to leave. So you have her words. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for indulging that too. I will first speak for her. But for the record, I'm Rachel London, the Executive Director of the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council. I am going to just read one part of Liz's testimony before I start on my own and describe some of the amendments that Delegate Feldmark, thank you, mentioned. So Liz is from the Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition, a coalition of organizations, individuals with Down syndrome and families who advocate for improved quality of life for Marylanders with Down syndrome. For the last 18 months, she's also served as co-chair of the Blueprint Special Education Work Group with Superintendent Wright. The proposed amendment that MDAC has proposed is to ensure that the analysis explicitly includes some of the specific challenges to including children with disabilities in a mixed delivery system that have been identified by that Blueprint Special Education Work Group. Specifically, they want to include the analysis to include opportunities for expanding publicly funded pre-K where children with and without disabilities in natural proportions learn together, with 4 parts: how to braid funds, teacher and staff recruitment and training in best practices, collaboration of LEAs and private pre-K providers to provide special education related services, and to look at the facility challenges for adding more public pre-K classrooms. Madam Chair, thank you for indulging me as I read those amendments because I'm not going to address them that specifically in my testimony. So still Rachel London, now with the hat of the Executive Director of the Maryland DD Council. And I really just want to make a few points. We've been here before. In 2017, many of us, including myself, Madam Chair, people you've heard from in the prior panel, actually sat on a work group about public pre-K. And the first recommendation from that work group's report was that high quality pre-K be provided in a mixed delivery system. What you also heard is that the recommendation has been made by the AIB, other Blueprint, and so this bill really does make sense. But in order to make sure we have a real impact for all children, we really do need to be explicit about children with disabilities. I'm a member of the Office of Child Care Advisory Council, so of course I would bring this to the table and this perspective, but this is a real opportunity for Maryland right now to embrace the need to be that explicit about children with disabilities. So the council supports this bill with the amendment that you just heard me describe, but that came from the Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition, so that our youngest children with disabilities can learn and play with their peers without disabilities. And finally, I just really want to thank the sponsor, who happens to also be my delegate, for seeing this addition as a friendly amendment.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. London? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a group of folks that are with us virtually. We will start with Mr. Hudson for 2 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, members of the committee. My name is Bill Hudson. I'm the Executive Director for the Family Child Care Alliance of Maryland. Through our Aspire Pre-K program, we represent over 95% of all the family child care providers in Maryland's pre-K system, and we strongly support House Bill 1475. While the bill is focused on pre-K, what's not readily apparent is that the work resulting from this bill will provide greater insights and understanding of Maryland's fragile child care marketplace, not just the mixed delivery pre-K system. This is critically important because child care is not just a social service. It's a core component of Maryland's economic infrastructure. As a result, decisions made about this industry directly impact workforce participation across the state. The recent report from the Comptroller's Office highlighted this fact. The report also states that there are gaps in the data needed to get an accurate picture of trends in Maryland's child care industry. Without good data, Even well-intentioned policies can inadvertently destabilize the childcare market, and this concern is not theoretical. In January, the State Board of Education and Accountability Implementation Board signed Joint Policy Number 3. While the policy aims to extend access to early childhood education, it represents a major intervention into a critical industry. It unfortunately was made without the data that is needed to reasonably predict the impact of such policies on the childcare marketplace and ultimately Maryland's economy. Passing House Bill 1475 is a proactive step to help ensure future decisions are grounded in a thorough, data-informed analysis of Maryland's childcare market. We urge favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Nakia Wallace, please, for 2 minutes.
Okay. Hello. I'm Nakia Wallace, the Director of Downtown Baltimore Child Care, a nonprofit child care center which has been providing child care in Baltimore City for 40 years. I'm here today in strong support of the House Bill 1475, the Mixed Delivery Model Viability Act, because every child deserves access to high quality pre-kindergarten, no matter whether they are served by a public or private provider. But for that model to succeed, we need to ensure that private providers can truly participate on an equal footing by identifying unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles, streamlining payment processes, and ensuring fair quality rating procedures. It is unfair that child care's eligibility for funding through MSDE is continuously threatened by undue harsh consequences from licensing and excels when the public schools do not participate in the same system. Currently, we are unable to plan effectively due to the timeline of pre-K award notification. Awards must be made in a timely manner so businesses and families can plan effectively to choose our programs. Public schools are able to enroll in the spring of the previous year, which the private providers cannot. The present day reimbursement model for invoices creates an unnecessary burden on providers. In order to participate in mixed delivery, childcare businesses currently must be able to prepay expenses. By addressing efficiencies and barriers, we strengthen the early education system for both families and providers. I urge you state leaders to support House Bill 1475 so we can build a mixed delivery pre-kindergarten system that truly works for all Maryland children. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Webb, please, for 2 minutes. Ooh, you're virtual. I mean, you're virtual. You are virtual, but you're muted. There you go.
Hi. I support House Bill 475. I'm asking for help in create equitable policies that support community-based mixed delivery pre-K programs. A new policy is necessary specific to Maryland Excellence rating. We need equity between public and private programs in order to extend and maintain seats for 3- and 4-year-olds. This next grant cycle, my program will not be able to participate in the pre-K grant due to an excess policy, and I want you to be aware of the law. 40 seats in Frederick County and 4 teachers will lose their positions. Based on the excess policy, due to 2 licensing violations, neither related to the pre-program, our Excels rating has been decreased from a 5 to 1. My current pre-K programs continue to receive excellent reviews from the MSDE pre-K grant monitors, even though we are currently a 1. The violation falls off in July 2025, but we are unable to apply due to the timing of the application. This year, we have also been told that even having 1 violation will preclude us from participating in the grant. As you know, in any business, mistakes are made, whether intentionally or unintentionally. I know public system employees have made many mistakes as well. However, they do not lose their opportunity to participate in the grant. Only community-based providers are receiving this punitive treatment. When we had a safety issue, I immediately self-reported to MSDE, the parent and social services, and terminated the sole staff member involved. As a result, my program lost 4 levels of Excels, tens of thousands of dollars, and 40 children will lose their pre-K seats. This could potentially put my small business out of business. This experience with Blueprint has prompted me to look into moving my child care businesses to neighboring states. Based on these policies, I would not recommend participating in Blueprint at this time. Please help us create equitable policies that don't crush our businesses so that we can serve the children in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Carolina Reyes, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Carolina Reyes, director and owner of Arco Iris Bilingual Children's Center in Laurel, Prince George County. I would like to participate in the pre-kindergarten mixed delivery. However, due to the many challenges that we hear already, I have to wait a little bit and not to choose to participate yet. The first challenge is the private early education and care in licensing family homes or centers are not being recognized as educational programs. Therefore, we need to be at the table and represented where decision-making is happening. This bill will speak to the important relationship between Maryland educational systems and private providers in order to conduct an analysis for the true mixed delivery system. My colleagues who are participating have shared of all the challenges such as grant writing issues, standards for the childcare and the pre-K programs at ELAs that are not aligned, reimbursement timelines that affect the operation of a small business, such as not having been paid on time, and that way they cannot pay the teacher salaries. How is this possible? Can this be happening to private small businesses? In addition, having a clear explanation of why some didn't make it through the grant application process. How can one learn to improve something if the feedback is minimal and often confusing? I serve a large group of families whose English is not their first language. My teachers and I speak their language, and our families feel understood and supported. Many of the families who have left to go to the pre-K, they call us back saying that they are missing the one-on-one interaction that they can have with us. The language barriers is not just an issue for providers, but for parents as well. We need to create groups that make accountability for the ECAC programs in each state, in each county, I'm sorry. We are asking the ECAC committees to be used these to very important purposes so we can achieve the goals to provide, a successful mixed delivery system. Thank you for listening, and I ask for your favorite support.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much for joining us. That concludes the bill hearings for House Bill 1475 and the bill hearings for today. Seeing how it is 4:42, we have to come back after session, folks, to vote. Yay! So come back after session and we'll knock it out and you'll be free to go. Thank you.